We're all familiar with the Greek gods and the Norse gods through popular culture, movies, books, etc. Less so with the Celtic and Irish pantheon, which is a shame because the Celtic pantheon and the Celtic myths in general are very rich. Maybe it's because generally the Irish mythological stories don't have a happy ending. Quite frequently they don't have a happy ending. Maybe that doesn't suit Hollywood. But delve even a little into a rich tapestry of Irish mythology and you'll be surprised what you find. Apologies before we start because this is a very long video, because we tried to cover as many Irish mythological figures as we could. And obviously, even with the length of the video, we could only touch on them. We couldn't cover them in any great depth. So let's dive in and enjoy the mysterious world that is Irish mythology. We've lots of folklore in our country. Elaborate tales of strange creatures, banshees and fairies. After Irish writer Bram Stoker produced his novel Dracula in 1897, the world came to associate the vampire legend with the Romanian province of Transylvania. Likewise, it is supposed by many that the anti-hero of the book Dracula, an aristocrat who became one of the undead, was based on Vlad III, Dracul, also known as Vlad the Impaler. As his title suggests, he was rather fond of bringing his many victims to a gory end. However, Mr. Stoker may have received his inspiration closer to home. Like most countries in Europe, Ireland has its own tales of the undead, or as they are known in Irish, na Navmarov. One such story, well known throughout Ireland at the time, was based in the County Derry parish of Errigal. The Avartok. In the 5th century, there was an evil chieftain known as the Avartok, the Irish for dwarf. He was reportedly small or dwarf-like and was known to practice the dark arts. He wasn't popular due to his cruel ways. He'd suspected that his wife was having an affair and decided to try and catch her in the act. He climbed out the bedroom window of the castle to try and spy on his wife. However, he slipped and fell to his death. The next day his body was found. His people were relieved that he died and had him buried standing upright, a tradition that befitted a chieftain. To the clan's horror, the Avartok had returned to the village the very next morning. He demanded that the villagers provide him fresh food from their cut wrists for him to drink. They did so out of fear. The villagers begged the nearest village chieftain, Cuchulainn, to come and kill the Avartok, to which he agreed. The Avartok died for a second time and again was buried upright. At this point, the villagers most likely thought that was the last they'd see of the evil dwarf. It wasn't to be. The Avartok returned the next morning with a bowl, again asking for fresh blood from the people. Cuchulainn once again killed the creature and buried him. Yeah, you guessed it. He was back again the very next morning asking people for their blood. Cuchulainn had run out of ideas, so he turned to a local saint for help. The saint advised that as the Avartok was already dead, he couldn't be killed again. The only way he could kill him was to stab his heart with a sword made from a yew tree, bury him upside down and cover the grave with ash branches and thorns, and place a heavy stone slab on top. Cuchulainn followed the instructions and buried the evil dwarf once and for all. People say that Bram Stoker took inspiration from this story for Dracula. Angus was one of the illustrious and mysterious Tuatha De Danann, a mystical race of beings who came to Ireland in the distant past, bringing high culture along with them. In the course of time, these Tuatha were raised to the status of gods and goddesses, though it should be said that the conception of the divine was quite different in early pagan Ireland from what we're familiar with today. Gods and goddesses weren't omnipotent, they weren't all good, they had their jealousies, they had their bad sides, they had their good sides, just like humans, only more powerful. The name Angus can be translated to mean chosen one, from Ain meaning one, and Gus meaning choice, one choice, the chosen one. The Og part of his name means young or youthful. Think of the magical land of fairies called Tir na Og, the land of the ever young. Angus was the son of Dagda, the father god of the Tuatha De Danann, and he was both conceived and born on the same day due to some magical spells cast by the Dagda. In this way, he's the archetypal youth man in perpetual springtime of life. Angus had a magic harp which could create an irresistible attraction to all who heard it. Boards are said to represent Angus' kisses, and it is written that 4 magical boards hovered around his head. These boards, Angus' kisses, were believed to carry messages of love on Angus' behalf, as he sang love and played beautiful music into the hearts of the young. Angus is also said to have been the protector and guardian of Diarmid and Grania, who we will meet later in the video, a mythical couple from one of our most tragic romance tales. Anya comes from a Gaelic word meaning bright, clear or radiant. Anya was an Irish goddess of summer, wealth and sovereignty. Her followers summoned her for aid in war and peace. She is affiliated with midsummer and the sun. Known as a fairy queen and a love goddess, she is known by other names such as the Lady of the Lake, the goddess of luck and magic, the goddess of earth and nature, and Lannan She, sweetheart of the She. Anya was thought to be the daughter of King Ogbal, a member of the Tuatha De Danann, and the foster son of the sea god Manannán mac Lir. However, other legends claim she was married to Manannán mac Lir. Other sources say she was the daughter of the Dagda and sister to Bridget. She is widely accepted as Aillin's sister. She was also considered to be the sister of Grania, with Anya ruling over the light half of the year and Gran ruling over the dark. However, Gran could be another aspect of Anya. Ermid is the Irish goddess associated with healing, and particularly herbal healing. Ermid is one of the Tuatha De Danann. Ermid's father was Dian Cecht, and she had 4 brothers, Meach, Cinn, Ketja and Cu. She was also the sister of the poet Ethan. Unfortunately, we don't know who her mother was, as there is no mention of her in any of the mythology. There are a number of myths associated with Ermid, all of which portray a generous, knowledgeable and empathic woman. Ermid has a part to play in the story of the restoration of King Nuada's arm, after he lost it in the first battle of Moytura. According to the story, Ermid's father, Dian Cecht, fashioned a replacement arm of silver so that he could rule his people once again, as kings were not allowed to rule if they weren't perfect. However, Ermid's brother Meach believed that with he and his sister's healing expertise, they could come up with a better solution. Combining their skills, they built Nuada an arm of flesh. But when their father, Dian Cecht, found out, he was furious. He attacked Meach in a jealous rage, and though Meach was a skilled healer, he could keep up with his wounds in battle. Eventually, he dealt him a savage blow that ended the battle. After Mick's death, Eärmod was devastated. She went to his grave to grieve, and as she wept, her tears watered the earth, and all of the healing herbs of the world grew from Mick's burial mound. The legend goes that there were 365 varieties in total, one for each of his sinews and joints. As Eärmod began to collect them, they spoke to her and told her all of their healing powers. She laid them on her cloak as she was taught, organising them into combinations that could cure every ailment on earth. When her father saw the work she had done, he was once again enraged and threw the cloak in the air, scattering the herbs. Because of this, no human knows all the secrets of the healing herbs. The knowledge remains with Eärmod, including the secret of how to use herbs to achieve immortality. Another tale from the mythology of Eärmod is the tale of the Well of Sláinte, which takes place after the Battle of Moytura. In this tale, Eärmod, along with her father and brothers, built a well to bring the slain warriors back to life after the battle. The well was filled with healing herbs, and Eärmod and the other healers sang an incantation over the waters to create an enchantment that could restore life when the warriors were dipped into it. The well was eventually abandoned as the enemies of the Tuatha De Danann filled it up with stones so it could not be used for healing. The legend goes that the site is still guarded by Dian Cecht and his sons to this day. Anu, described as the mother goddess of the gods of Ireland. Anu is the earth mother goddess of ancient times. If you ever find yourself in County Kerry, in the south of the island, you will have a chance to visit the Paps of Anu, two breast-shaped hills believed to have been used in the rituals of prehistory. On each hilltop sits a cairn, thought to have once been passage graves. A line of stones connects the two cairns, and archaeologists believe that this was once a processional route to the ancients. The hills were a visual reminder that the earth was a motherly body. The worship of Anu, also known as Danu, was brought to Ireland by the Tuatha De Danann, who arrived, it is said, in the mist, and they came through the air to Ireland. They brought with them all their treasures and magical skills, and won the land from the Fair Bullock in a bloody battle. Anu, who is attributed to both the land and the sea, offered fertility, abundance, regeneration and nurturing, which makes her the perfect patron for us. Uisci. These are water horses of Ireland. They gallop out of the crashing waves up onto the shore, venturing inland. They're supposed to make excellent mounts for whoever can catch one, but riding in a Uisci is not without risk. If they hear or see the sea, they set off in an uncontrollable charge, galloping straight back into the water depths where they came from, taking their helpless rider with them to be torn apart. Badb. In the rich tapestry of Celtic mythology, few figures are as intriguing and multifaceted as Badb, the goddess of war, death and prophecy. Often associated with the Morrigan, a triad of war goddesses, Badb embodies the fearsome and foreboding aspect of the battle, the inevitability of death and the mysterious power of foresight. Badb is primarily seen as a goddess of war, embodying the chaos and terror of battle. She is often depicted as a figure who revels in the confusion and the bloodshed of conflict, using her powers to influence the outcome of fights. Her appearance before a battle was believed to be an omen of death, and she could sway the tide of warfare with her enchantments. As a deity associated with death, Badb's role extends beyond the battlefield. She is seen as a guide for the souls of the dead, leading them to the afterlife. Her connection with crows and ravens, scavengers that are often present at sites of death, reinforces her association with the end of life and the transition to the world beyond. Badb's ability to foretell the future is another significant aspect of her mythology. She would often deliver prophecies of doom, predicting the downfall of warriors and the outcome of battles. This aspect connects her with the broader Celtic belief in fate and the power of prophecy to shape the lives of mortals. Recording supernatural creatures in early Irish and Scottish literature, the Boann were airborne shrieking demons that haunted battlefields and areas of combat, encouraging and exulting in the bloodshed below. They may have had goat-like appearance or a goat's head, suggesting a derivation from Boann, male goat, puck. In modern literature, particularly fantasy fiction, they are sometimes equated with the Fomorigh, though this is open to debate. In some Middle Irish texts, the Fomorigh are described as having heads of goats, but the Boann seem to have been a more elemental form of the spirit, closely associated with violence and violent death. The relative uniqueness of the Boann in medieval Judeo-Christian tradition makes it likely that they derive from the indigenous mythological beliefs of the Gaelic-speaking peoples. There is the possibility of a link between the literary Boann and the rather mysterious Gavarchin, as well as the better-known folkloric Pukai, not the similar elemental creatures from the late traditions of Ireland, Scotland and Man. The invariably hostile Pukai can appear as goat-like forms, and it may be that in part they are a distant echo of the mythological and arguably pre-Christian Boann. The Banshee. The Banshee is possibly one of the most well-known spirits on the island of Ireland, said to appear in many forms and be recognisable by her piercing screams. We have done a video specifically on the Banshee. The scream is a warning that death will soon occur to someone close to the listener. Do you have Irish ancestors? It may be worth finding out. People claim that the Banshee would cry for 5 major families: the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the O'Connors, the O'Gradys and the Kavanaghs. As with all legends, people have their own beliefs. Some say that when you look at the Banshee she will disappear. Others warn that you must never lay eyes on her. She is said to have varying powers and abilities, and it is unknown whether she is a force for good or evil. It has to be said that there is little mythology about the Banshee ever actually causing harm. She is more a harbinger of death. Cuchulainn is the daughter of Fearsome and one of the Tuatha De Danann. In legend, she is a good sorceress who joins 3 others of the Tuatha De Danann to defeat the evil Greek witch Carmen. According to the Book of Leinster, Cuchulainn was killed along with Dullahan by grey demons of air during the Second Battle of Moytura. Cuchulainn and Dian are called Lugh's 2 witches, and when asked what they will do in battle, they respond that they will enchant the trees, stones and grasses of the earth to root the Fomorians with horror and affliction. In the Lear Gavala Éireann, Cuchulainn and Dian are called she-farmers and mentioned along with their sisters, Argon and Beithe, as daughters of Fearsome. Cuchulainn is often confused with Bacuma of the fair skin. Boann. Boann is an early Irish mythological figure, considered a goddess of birth and sister to the river goddess Boann. She is also associated with the underworld, specifically inhabiting either the Irish Magmel or the Welsh Anwin. The name Bevan means melodious lady or fair lady. It's derived from the Irish words ban, woman, and bin, melodious, sweet and pleasing. Boann. The goddess Boann is the Irish goddess of the Boyne River that flows through the Boyne Valley, Brunavania, in County Meath. She has strong ties to the ancient land, particularly Newgrange, as it is told that she created the river. Boann is strongly associated with poetry and legend. It says that drinking from her river, the Boyne, in the month of June would grant gifts of poetry and seership. Boann created the Boyne River by approaching the well of Seagus, though it was forbidden to do so for anyone but her husband, King Necton, and his cupbearers. This magical well was surrounded by 9 ancient hazel trees, whose nuts would fall into the well, where they would be eaten by the salmon, who would be endowed with great wisdom. Both salmon and hazelnuts embodying wisdom in Irish mythology. Boann visited the well one day and decided to test its powers by walking 3 times around it, Tuatha, anti-clockwise. Suddenly the magical water surged upward to meet her, and she suffered catastrophic injuries as it swept her and her dog, Davila, down to the sea, thus creating the Boyne River. In Irish mythology, Boann is said to be the wife of Necton, and is also known for having an affair with Dagda. This affair is particularly well known because she became pregnant with Dagda's child, and bore him a son named Angus. In fact, as we've said already, Angus was actually conceived and born on the same day, as the Dagda uses magic to stop the sun in the sky for 9 months in order to conceal the affair from Boann's husband. There are no other children known to belong to her, but some people believed that the Dagda's daughter, Bridget, may also be hers. Boann also has an appearance in the Táin Bó Friac text. In this story, she helps her mortal nephew, Fraic, to impress Mav and Ailill by giving him a garment of the Sidhe. She gives him 50 mantles and tunics emblazoned intricately with different types of animals, 50 spears set with jewels that shine like the sun in the darkness, 50 black horses, 50 swords with hilts of gold, 7 great dogs, 7 trumpeters, 3 jesters and 3 harpists. Rather generous. Boann is associated with cattle, particularly white cattle, as her name suggests. White cow, in the Irish language, is Bó Fionn. This meaning actually helps us to confirm that these legends indeed come from antiquity, as Ptolemy's geography from the 2nd century shows us that the Boyne River was called Bovinda back then, deriving from the common Celtic word for white cow. Some believe her to be the mother of Bridget, or at least associated with Bridget. It is possible that some stories about Bridget may have originally been attributed to Boann, but simply were retold as Bridget stories as time passed. Whispered across the misty ages from time long gone are stories of the Cailleach, which we will meet later. One of the ancient goddesses of the first people to walk Ireland, queen of the mighty glaciers that once clenched the land in a frozen grip. Many tales are told of the old hag, but fewer speak of her consort, the Bodach. His name means the old man, or the poor farmer, and it may be he was father in some manner to the Banshees, for his appearance usually foretells death and disaster. Dressed in poor and rustic clothes, maybe tuna straw, with an old hat perched low on his head. The old man looks on with dark and knowing eyes, filled with laughter at the doings of mortals soon to pass. The Bodach loves to play tricks on people, and especially on children. Tricks of a sort that don't usually end well. He comes down chimneys in the form of a shadow and slips through open windows, or even tin cracks too narrow for so much as a mouse to get through, poking and irritating people, keeping them awake. But it is said that he will not cross salt, spread in the heart, or across the threshold. His name is mentioned in the foot race of the Cleena, when Prince Ironbones of Thessaly challenged the best of the Cleena to beat him in a run from Beneather in Munster. Fionn couldn't find the best runner, but while he was searching, he came across the Bodach, who agreed to run the race. Well, the Bodach got up late, missing the start of the race entirely, but then overtook Ironbones twice, stopping again to get some blackberries for his lunch, and even ran backwards looking for his lost coat. But when all was said and done, he still won the race. For all his reputation, he was also known as the King of Moymel, the Plain of Delights. This was said to be a pleasurable paradise, but it was no afterlife, being reserved for the living, and of them only a select few who were chosen to visit and were bold enough to make the journey. Here there was no death or hunger, no sickness or suffering, only music, youth, strength, life, and all pleasurable pursuits. Moymel can be merry. Moymel can be many places and in many times, but it most often appears as a mystical island off the west coast of Ireland. Beware though, should you long for your family and loved ones back in the realms of the mortals. For if you should but set foot on mundane earth after spending too long in Moymel, you may find the weight of every year you have missed landing on your shoulders, and all the heavier for it. Bran and Cuchulainn. Fionn McCool had two hunting dogs, Bran and Cuchulainn, intelligent and skilled in hunting. They displayed great loyalty to Fionn. Dogs are often known for these traits, but with brother and sister Bran and Cuchulainn, there was an added factor, for they were related to Fionn. Legend has it that they were born of Fionn's aunt, Tuatha. This was a time after she had married and fallen pregnant. Her husband, Dian, had been the lover of Uchtelv, who belonged to the Sidhe. Uchtelv was jealous and turned Tuatha into a dog. She remained in this form until the spell was broken, but by then she had given birth to the puppies, who remained as dogs. One day, when Fionn was hunting with the dogs, they tracked a deer. This was in fact Sav, who we will meet later. The Cailleach we mentioned a few moments ago. The Cailleach, or the hag, has been feared and revered across Celtic cultures in Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man for hundreds of years. She is called Beara in Scotland and has strong associations with the Beara Peninsula in Ireland, which straddles counties Cork and County Kerry. Depicted as a veiled hag or old crone with one eye and deathly pale skin, she is said to have a bow-legged leaping gait, striding across mountains with a power to shape and transform the landscape as rocks fall from her gathered apron. The Cailleach is the goddess of winter months and is said to control the weather and the winds, as well as the length and harshness of the winter. Her season begins on October 31st, the Samhain festival, which we celebrate today as Halloween. She was a complex character, neither fully good nor evil, caring for animals during the dark winter months, and was the patron of wolves. She is also known to safeguard deer and has a particular affinities for black cats, wild cattle and goats. The word Cailleach comes from Cailleach, meaning veiled one, in Gaelic. This word is the base root of many words to describe women, such as the contemporary Irish word Colleen, meaning girl. Some scholars believe Cailleach was more like a title, as the name has been associated with various figures throughout history and mythology. All the tales of Celtic mythology were passed down through oral tradition for so long it is difficult to untangle the web of stories and names given to the characters, as there are many versions of the Cailleach across the different territories. Ireland has 3 dragon sisters, Dabran, Farba and Cailleach, who are offsprings of the gatekeeper of hell and the all-devouring sow. They were nursed by the red demon of West Ireland. Cailleach, the youngest of the 3, made her home on Inishcaig, now Scattery Island. A horrible sight she was to see, a great dragon bigger than a small isle, with a back like a round island covered with scales and shells. A rough bristly mane like a boar's covered her foreparts. When she opened her carnivorous mouth, filled with a double row of sharp teeth, her entrails could be seen. A cruel eye gleamed in her head. Her body stood on 2 short, thick, hairy legs, armed with iron nails that struck sparks on the rocks as she moved. Her belly was like a furnace. The tail of a whale she had. A tail with iron claws on it that ploughed furrows in the ground behind her. Cailleach could move on land and swim with equal ease, and the sea boiled around her. Farba was slain by Crow and Sal and Daltine, the 3 sons of Torlach MacStern, and Dabran was killed by Diarmid O'Divna after the 3 brothers set her to protect their forts. When Cailleach sensed the loss of her siblings, she went on a rampage, laying waste to the lands around the Shannon Estuary, from Limerick to the sea, sinking ships and paralysing commerce for a year. When the 3 brothers returned, they saw the destruction wreaked by Cailleach. They were so distraught that they flung themselves into the sea to their deaths. Cailleach herself was defeated by a far more humble, unassuming hero. When Saint Senan made landfall in Inishcaig, Cailleach prepared to devour him whole, but the holy man made a sign of the cross in front of her face, and she was quietened. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, leave this island and hurt no one here or wherever you leave to. The Cailleach did as she was told. She disappeared into the estuary and went to Slieve Colin without harming anyone. And if she is still alive, she has remained obedient to Senan's command. The ruins of the Church of St. Senan can still be seen to this day on Scattery Island. A changeling, also historically referred to as an oaf or oaf, is a human-like creature found throughout much of European folklore. According to folklore, a changeling was substitute left by supernatural being when kidnapping human being. Sometimes the changeling was a stock, a piece of wood, made magically to resemble a kidnapped human. More often the changeling was a supernatural being made magically to look like the kidnapped human. Supernatural beings blamed for stealing children include fairies, demons, trolls, and many others. Usually the kidnapped human was a child, but there were cases, particularly in Scandinavia and Ireland, where adults were taken. The Children of Lir. One of the more tragic and enduring. Long ago there was a king called Lear. He lived in a castle with his wife and 4 beautiful children, Fionnuala, Éave, Con and Fiachra. Lear's wife died and they all missed her very much. The king saw that his children were very sad. And needed a mother, so he decided to marry again. Darragh, the High King, sent Aoife, his daughter, to be Lear's new wife. Aoife was beautiful, but she was not a kind-hearted person that Lear thought she was. At first Aoife loved the children, but soon she started to grow jealous of them. She knew that Lear loved them more than he loved her. She wanted the king's love all for herself, so she planned to get rid of the children. On summer's day, Aoife took the children to Lough Lamfada, where the children were playing. Aoife took out a druid's magic wand and cast a terrible spell on them. There was a flash of light and the children vanished. In their place was left 4 beautiful swans with feathers as white as snow. One of the swans opened its beak and spoke with Fionnuala's voice. "What have you done to us?" Aoife cackled, "I put a spell on you. You will be spawns for 900 years. You will spend 300 years on this lake, 300 years on the Sea of Moyle, and 300 years on the waters of Inishglora. Only the sound of a Christian church bell can break the spell." When the children did not return home that evening, the king went out to look for them beside the lake. But all he saw were 4 beautiful swans. Too amazing, one of the swans called out. It was Fionnuala. She told him what Aoife had done to them. Lear returned to his castle and pleaded with Aoife to reverse the spell, but Aoife refused. Lear became very angry and banished her from his kingdom. Lear spent all his time beside the lake, talking to his children and listening to their singing. When Lear grew old and died, the children were very sad. After 300 years had passed, they moved to the Sea of Moyle, between Ireland and Scotland. It was very cold and stormy on the sea. When the time came, they flew to Inishglora. By now the swans had grown old and tired. Life was easier on the island. It was warmer there, and there were lots of food. Then one morning they heard the sound they'd been waiting for. It was the sound of a Christian church bell. They swam to shore. Outside the church, where the bells were ringing, was a monk, Cuchulainn. He was stunned when he saw 4 swans turn into 4 old people in front of him. Fionnuala put her arms around their brothers. They were so happy to be human again. They were now 900 years old. Cuchulainn listened to their sad story and baptised them. Soon after they died of old age. He buried them in one grave. That night he dreamt he saw 4 children flying up through the clouds. He knew that the children of Lear were now with their father and mother. He buried them in one grave. That night he dreamt he saw 4 children flying up through the clouds. He knew that the children of Lear were now with their father and mother. Cleena was the mystical queen of the Banshees, the female spirits of the Tuatha De Danann, and forever will be associated with the southern part of Ireland, and Cork in particular. She was a goddess of love and beauty, and is surrounded by 3 birds whose fabulous song could cure all ills. Those who heard the song were lulled into deep sleep, and when they awoke found their sickness had been cured. She was a fabulous beauty, perhaps the most beautiful woman in the world. Other tales of Cleena were not quite so benign. She is said to have lured sailors to the seashore where they would drown, unconcerned as she was with the fate of mere mortals. But there was one such mortal who was the cause of her downfall. She left the land of promise in the other world, known as Tir Tairngire, to be with her mortal lover, Cuchulainn. It was an amazing sacrifice for a goddess from the other world to remain in the mortal realm. But that is what she chose. When one day Cuchulainn went off to hunt, Cleena remained at the seashore, but was swept away by a wave incanted by Lear, the sea deity. Ever since that time, the tide in Glandor in Cork is known as Chung Cleena, meaning Cleena's waves, especially when a fierce loud breaking wave thunders out from the sea. And since that time, Irish legend has it that every 9th wave in a sequence is the strongest and is known as Cleena's wave. Cleena was revered by many of the strongest Gaelic families of old in the annals of the kingdoms of Ireland. Donal O'Donovan, one of the greatest ancestors of the O'Donovan families, is referred to as the Dragon of Cleena. She is also associated with the McCarthys of Desmond, who adopted Cleena as their fairy woman. One member of the O'Leary sept was named Conor Cleena, again showing how well known and respected Cleena was among those ancient southern families. Perhaps one of the most enduring stories of Cleena relates to the famous Blarney Stone. While building his castle in Cork, Cormac McCarthy became involved in legal difficulties and appealed to Cleena for help. In a dream, she instructed him to kiss the first stone he found the following morning, and if he did so, his problems would be resolved. McCarthy did as instructed, and when he argued his case in the courts, found that he was possessed of such eloquence and convincing language that he easily won his case. He honoured Cleena by having the stone he had kissed set into the wall, where today it is visited and kissed by countless thousands of visitors from all parts of the world. The legend of Blarney was enhanced even more when Queen Elizabeth I found that she could not successfully persuade Cormac McCarthy to surrender his castle to her. Such was the delaying tactics and now superior negotiating skills and turn of phrase that the frustrated monarch of England described his communications as Blarney, as what he says he does not mean. And so it is that Cleena is well remembered in Ireland. Her palace was near Mallow in Cork, at a place that is still called Cleena, meaning Cleena's rocks. And every time a massive thunderous waves breaks on the seashore, her memory rises in the history of Ireland, echoing from the mystic era that, although now at an end, is never forgotten. The Cuchulainn. The black dog, also known as the Cuchulainn, is found in folklore all over the world and is essentially a spirit that comes out at night and is often associated with evil fairies or the Christian devil. Usually it is believed to be the portent of death. Larger than an earthly dog, it has large eyes that glow, often associated with storms, ancient pathways, crossroads, and places of execution such as a gallows. Their origin is lost in the midst of time, but throughout the folklore and mythology of Europe, dogs have been associated with death and the underworld, often depicted as guardians of the gates. It may also be because of the scavenging habits of dogs, often seen around graveyards after a battle, searching for fresh meat. It may be this reason that the black dog evolved. In Irish and Scottish folklore, the Cuchulainn is a large hound and fearsome dog with supernatural powers. They are usually black, but may also be green, or even white, with one red ear and one red eye. They are always large, sometimes being described being as big as a calf or a small horse. The Cuchulainn roamed the land performing certain tasks for the fairy masters, such as helping in the hunt, abducting human women to take back to the fairy realm. It's believed that these women were used to nurse fairy babies. The Cuchulainn are completely silent in the hunt, but sometimes they would give 3 blood-curdling howls that would be heard over a great distance. When men heard this sound, they would lock up their women to prevent them from being carried off. They are said to have the power to appear and disappear at will, and in much the same way as the Grim Reaper appears at death to lead the soul to the afterlife, so the Cuchulainn takes the soul to the underworld. Cuchulainn was the son of the god Lugh, an immortal princess. He was destined for a short, glorious life, and he was often depicted with the shadow of his doom looming over his shoulder. As a boy, his name was Sedanta. On a journey to join the King of Ulster's court, he acquired a new name. The king, Conor MacNessa, and his court were feasting at a house of Cuchulainn the smith. Cuchulainn set his fierce hound to guard the door, in addition to 150 of Conor's own boy troops. Sedanta, armed with only a hurley stick and schlitter, tried to reach the court. With this, he destroyed all of the youths and then drove a sliotar into the mouth of the savage hound, killing it instantly. Cuchulainn was devastated at the lot of his guard dog, but Sedanta volunteered to perform the task, instead thus gaining the name Cuchulainn, meaning the Hound of Cullen. Cuchulainn was trained as a warrior in Scotland by a mystical female warrior named Scotach. Cuchulainn returned to Ireland to be the champion of Ulster in the war against Maeve, Queen of Connacht, who wished to seize a bull belonging to Ulster. The most tragic episode of the conflict occurred when Cuchulainn was forced to fight his childhood friend and foster brother Ferdia. Cuchulainn killed him with his secret weapon. This was a dart which separated into multiple barbs when entering the body, causing fatal wounds, and was impossible to withdraw. Another aspect in his favour was his warp spasm, which occurred when he was in the fury of battle. This gave him a monstrous appearance and turned him into a lethal killing machine who did not know friend from foe. Cuchulainn was married to an Irish princess Emer, who required him to perform several very difficult tasks before he could wed her. They were happy together until Cuchulainn became enamoured of the fairy princess Fand. Emer was consumed with jealousy until Fand returned her husband, and Manan cast a spell of forgetfulness over all involved so they could return to their previous states. Cuchulainn was eventually killed by the combined armies of Connacht after being lured through trickery by Maeve. His death was said to be foreshadowed by many evil omens, and the death crow, the Morrigan, was seen to settle on his shoulder as he made his stand. Cuchulainn was a mighty warrior whose fame spread throughout the world. Because of his short life, he was single-minded in his quest for glory. He was loyal to his friends and family and had a strong sense of duty. The Dagda, the good god, or the great god, is one of the most important characters in Irish mythology. He's one of the Tuatha De Danann and is associated with agriculture, strength, fertility, great manliness, magic and wisdom, and seen as many things: a druid, king, and also father-like figure. He has control over life and death, and over the weather and the crops, as well as the time and the seasons. Described as a large man or giant, bearded and wearing a hooded cloak. He holds a magic staff, sometimes a club or a mace, called a Lugh Mór, or Lugh Lamfada, with which he would kill with one end of it and give life with the other. He has a cauldron called the Cuire Ernsk, which never ran empty, and his magic harp, Uithne, which could control men's emotions when it wasn't changing the seasons. As Dagda is associated with the Morrigan, Great Queen or Phantom Queen, but also Boann's White Cow paramour, his children are named as Brigid, Kermit, Angus, Bov Darragh, Ed, Midir. He was the brother or father of Ogma. And Dagda himself seemed to have many names too, each giving a window of insight into the different sides of his character. While the Christians were penning our Irish myths, it is thought that they brought a bit of comedic lightness or denigration to the description of the Dagda, when they described him as oafish and crude, wearing a short rough tunic that barely covers his rump, dragging the great Lugh Mór on the ground. But then there is another description, and quite fitting to his role in the mythology as the beautiful god of the heathens. For the Tuatha De Danann worshipped him, for he was an earth god to them because of the greatness of his magical power. Another of the extraordinary finds on the hill of Ishnok was the stable of the Dagda's solar horses. These stables lie on the north flank of the hill, under a wheel-shaped enclosure, which conceal two astonishing souterrains beneath a paved floor. One in the shape of the divine mare is pursued by another in the shape of a galloping stallion. According to legend, many of the ancient monuments found across the beautiful Irish landscape were built by Undagda as houses both for himself and his many children. The Celts worshipped many gods, but as with many other ancient cultures, they also feared evil forces. There are many stories of vampirism in Ireland, and one of the most frightening creatures is known as the Dearg Dú, the Red Thirst. However, the legend of the Dearg Dú is as tragic as it is scary. Many centuries ago, in the area that is now Waterford City, there lived a young woman who was as beautiful in personality as she was in face. She was deeply in love with a farm labourer, and they had made plans to marry. Unfortunately for them, arranged marriages were not uncommon at the time, and her father cared only for money, not love. Instead, he forced her to marry a much older, wealthy clan chieftain in exchange for money and land for himself. The young woman's new husband was a cruel man and treated her very badly. He kept her locked in a tower and would take delight in hurting her just to see blood on her pale skin. She hoped her lost love would come to rescue her, but he could not. Eventually her heart broke and she wasted away. The villagers took her body and buried it under what was known as Strongbow's tree. There was an old Irish practice of placing a tall pile of stones on the grave of recently deceased, so they could not rise again. But for some reason, on the night of her burial, this didn't happen. Some say it's because the villagers felt guilty for not doing anything to save her from her wicked husband. What the villagers could not have known was that the spirit that rose from the grave on the first anniversary of death was nothing like the young woman whose body it had come from. The spirit was seeking revenge on those who had ruined her life. First, she visited her childhood home. As her father lay sleeping in his bed, she kissed his lips and sucked all of the air out of his body. As she made her way to see her husband, she came across him staggering drunkenly home from the tavern. As her lips met his, she not only sucked the air from his lungs, but also the blood from his veins. Having then developed a taste for blood, the spirit of the young woman continued to prey on young men, luring them with her beauty before feasting on their blood. To try and prevent more young men falling victim to the Dearg Dú, the locals would meet on the eve of the anniversary of her death and place rocks on her grave so that the spirit couldn't rise. Like many legends, it is difficult to say how much of the Dearg Dú is based on real people and events, and how much on vivid imaginations and interpretations of generations of storytellers. There are no specific details as to where Strongbow's tree might have been in Waterford City, and hence where the young woman was buried. However, some have claimed that the tree is in a graveyard close to Reginald's Tower, and that there is apparently a grave there piled with high stones. We leave it to you to play detective. King Conor MacNessa came to power as a young man. He took the kingship from his foster father, Fergus MacRiach, for a year, but showed such wisdom during the year that the people of Ulster decided he should stay on as king at the end. When he was newly come to the throne, he and his warriors of the Red Branch were invited to a feast at the house of Felmund, the harper. Felmund was in high spirits on this night because his wife was about to give birth to their first child, and he was very excited. He asked if Conor's druid, Capad, would make a prophecy to tell him what was in store for the baby. Capad placed his hand on Felmund's wife's womb and said that the child was going to be a girl and her name would be Deirdre, and that she would grow to be the most beautiful woman who ever lived. But he said, an excess of anything is deadly, and she will be the cause of much trouble, and she will split the Red Branch in two. Now when they heard this, the men of the Red Branch demanded the child be killed there and then, before she had a chance to fulfill her destiny. But Conor wanted to have his reputation of a wise king and a merciful king, so he stopped them. He said that he could not countenance the death of an infant in the house of its father, but that he would take the child when she was born. He would have her raised up in secret, and if she grew up to be as beautiful as Badb promised, he would marry her himself and put her in such a high position as no man would dare to look at her. So he had his own nurse take the baby to a hidden valley and raise the child away from everyone else. From time to time, Conor would go and visit to check how Deirdre was getting on. She grew up every bit as beautiful a child as had been prophesied, but she didn't have much affection for Conor, though he was fair-haired and handsome, and had no shortage of female admirers in Aomaka. Lorcan was very protective of Deirdre, and careful to make sure that none saw her. The only person beside Conor who she let into the valley was an old man who would come by to help with the work. He was mute and could tell no one about the girl in the valley and her enchanting beauty. One day in early springtime, when the snow was still on the ground, Deirdre was almost a one. Lorcan had an old man slaughter a calf for her. The blood spilled out onto the snow, and a raven came down to eat the blood. And when she saw this, Deirdre cried out and went into a faint. Lorcan thought she had been upset at the sight of the blood, but Deirdre told her nurse that she had fallen in love with these three colours, and would only give her love to a man with hair as black as a raven, skin as white as snow, and cheeks as red as blood. She asked Lorcan if she knew of any man who looked like this, and Lorcan, unable to deny Deirdre anything she asked for, told her of the youngest son of Uisneach, a warrior of the Red Branch, young and brave and beautiful. His name was Naoise, and he had the colouring Deirdre loved. He was inseparable from his brothers, and he was the most handsome warrior of the Red Branch. Deirdre pestered Lorcan to find out some way to let her see Naoise, but Lorcan refused. She told Deirdre she'd see him soon enough when Conor MacNessa married her and took her to Aomaka with him. But Deirdre would not be put off. She begged Lorcan to let her see Naoise, and eventually Lorcan relented. The next time she went to Aomaka, she told the sons of Uisneach that there was a wonderful hunting to be had in the valley where she lived, and to be sure to go there the next time they went hunting. She told Deirdre she could spy on them when they came to make sure she was not seen. But when the brothers came to the valley to hunt, Deirdre fell in love with Naoise the moment she saw him. She knew this was the only man for her. Before Lorcan could stop her, she stepped out to greet him, and it was as if she turned from girl into woman in that moment. She smiled at Naoise and flirted and cajoled him, and he fell completely in love with her the moment he saw her. She asked him if he would run away with her, but Naoise knew who she must be, and knew that she belonged to Conor MacNessa the king. He refused, and Deirdre put a gassa on him that he had to run away with her. Naoise had no choice then but to get Deirdre as far away from Aomaka as he could, before the king found out. His brothers refused to be separated from him, and the four fled Ulster with their servants and retainers. There was nowhere in Ireland they could rest and be safe, so the sons of Uisneach took Deirdre across the sea to Scotland. The brothers entered into service with the King of Scotland and became part of his army. But they never stayed in the fort with the other warriors. At the end of every day they would go off into the wilderness. No one knew where. The King of Scotland grew suspicious and decided to find out what they were keeping secret from him. He sent spies to follow them, and the spies reported back that the three brothers had come to a camp in the middle of nowhere, where they were greeted by the most beautiful woman any of them had ever seen. Deirdre had made home for her and Naoise in the wilds, and she took care of him and his brothers, cooking fine food for them and making sure they wanted for nothing. As soon as the King of Scotland heard about the great beauty, he wanted her for himself. He knew he couldn't kill the brothers when they had sworn to serve him, so he put them on the front line of every battle, hoping they would be killed. They were such great warriors that it didn't work. Deirdre realised what was happening and persuaded Naoise of the danger they were in. They left the King of Scotland's service and fled further into the wilderness, coming at last to a remote island in the north, near to the training school of the warrior woman Scahach. They lived in the wilds for many years, the brothers hunting and Deirdre making a home for them. And Elmac of Fearsome was the only one brave enough to raise the subject of the sons of Ishnach with Conor. When Conor thought of Naoise's betrayal, it never failed to drive him into a rage. But Fergus was very fond of the sons of Ishnach and never stopped arguing for Conor to forgive them and to let them come home. He made so many arguments and so many pleas that at last Conor gave in. He told Fergus he could invite the brothers back to Ulster and place them under his own protection as a guarantee of their safety. So Fergus went to Scotland, and when he landed on the shore, he let out a shout far into the wilds. Naoise was playing chess with Deirdre. When he heard the shout, he jumped to his feet, saying, "That's the shout of an Irishman." But Deirdre said it was not. It was definitely the shout of a Scottishman. Fergus shouted from the beach again, and Naoise leaped up crying, "That's the shout of an Ulsterman." But again Deirdre persuaded him it was not. Then Fergus shouted again, and Naoise cried, "That's the shout of Fergus MacRacha." And nothing Deirdre said could persuade him otherwise. He asked her why she had lied, and Deirdre told him she had a dream the night before. A raven had flown over to Scotland from Ireland with 3 drops of honey in its beak. But when it landed, the honey turned to blood. But Naoise and his brothers were so excited at the prospect of seeing Fergus again that they dismissed her dream as the woman's imagining and rushed to greet their dear friend. Fergus told them the wonderful news that Conor MacNassa had finally been persuaded to forgive them and take them back into the Red Branch. The brothers were thrilled as they missed Downwalker and their friends there. They swore an oath that they would not eat or sleep till they were back in Omagh. But on the voyage back to Ireland, Deirdre never once took her eyes off the shoreline of Scotland. She sang a lament for having to leave the mountains and lochs of Scotland, the only home she had ever been happy in. When they landed on the shore of Ulster, the local man came to invite Fergus to a feast. There was a gassa on Fergus and all the Red Branch warriors never to refuse a feast in their honour, and so he could not refuse. Now this man had prepared a feast for Fergus at Conor's request. He was not nearly so ready to forgive as Fergus thought. Deirdre begged Fergus not to desert them. She was sure something terrible would happen, but he could not refuse. Then Deirdre berated him for being a coward and deserting the men he'd put under his protection. He was more interested in eating and drinking than in honour. To placate her, Fergus had his son Feacu keep up his duty to ensure their protection. When they arrived at Omagh, Conor did not come out to greet them. He sent Larkin instead, and she told Naoise to hide Deirdre's face, and she brought them to the speckled house where the warriors of the Red Branch hung their weapons and the heads of their enemies. They were given food and drink there, and Naoise and Deirdre played a game of chess to pass the time. Conor was in 2 minds whether or not to forgive Naoise. He wanted to let it go. He knew it made him look bad to hold a grudge for so long. But he had become so furious that he thought of Deirdre getting away that he could not bring himself to forgive Naoise. He asked Larkin, what did Deirdre look like? Was she still beautiful? And Larkin said, "Oh, the wilderness has ruined my poor Deirdre. She is a hag, her skin weathered and grey, her fingernails dirty and broken, and teeth has been left yellow, and her hair coarse as a horse's mane." At that, Conor's jealousy abated, and he thought of how fine it would be to welcome the brothers back into service. But when, as he thought it was over, he was not sure he could trust Larkin to be impartial when it came to Deirdre. So he sent the servant to spy in the window of the speckled house and report back to him. Naoise saw the man looking through the window and threw a chess piece at him, knocking out his eye. The man came back to Conor with one eye missing and said it was a price worth paying to see Deirdre, as he would gladly give up his other eye to look at her again. At this, Conor's jealousy came flooding back, and he called on his warriors to attack Naoise and the sons of Uisnech. But half of the men refused to attack their former brothers in arms, and would not fight. The others attacked the speckled house. The sons of Uisnech put Deirdre in the middle of them, and stood shoulder to shoulder in a circle around her. They were able to fight any number of men that came at them, and no matter what side Conor men attacked from, they were met with swords and shields. Fergus MacRua's son Fiacha fought Conor MacNassa's son in single combat. Conall Currach saw a man attacking the king's son, and without pausing to see who it was, he struck Fiachnú down dead. But when he saw who it was that he had killed, he cried, "A king's son for a king's son," and cut off the head of Conor MacNassa's son. Conor could see that his men were making no headway, so he went to Catbad the Druid for help. Catbad agreed to help him, but only if Conor swore that he would not kill the sons of Uisnech. Conor agreed and said that he only wanted Naoise to apologise, and all would be forgiven. So Catbad sent a spell to surround the sons of Uisnech with black and hungry sea. They had to swim, though they were on dry land. Naoise put Deirdre up on his shoulders, and they swam and fought off their foes until exhaustion overcame them and their weapons slipped from their fingers. Conor's men seized them, and Conor said that while he couldn't kill them himself, he would give a fortune to any man who would do the deed for him. None of the men of the Red Branch would do it, but at last one man stepped forward. He was the son of the King of Norway, Magna Ruhand, and Naoise had killed his father and brothers in the battle long ago. He said he would be glad to kill them for Conor. As none of the brothers wanted to live a minute longer than the others, it was eventually decided that Naoise, who had a sword given to him by Manon mac Lear that could cut down anything in front of it, he asked Manon Ruhand to use the sword and cut off their heads all at the same incident. And so that is what he did. The three sons of Uisnech laid their heads down on the block, and Magna Ruhand swung the sword and chopped their heads off. When Fergus MacRua came back from the feast, he saw the sons of Uisnech dead, and his own son dead besides. He burned Aonmhacha to the ground. Then he and half of the Red Branch warriors, who had refused to take part in the fight, left Ulster. They went to Conor MacNassa's greatest enemy, Queen Maeve of Connacht, and pledged their service to her. Conor put Deirdre into a beautiful house and surrounded her with the finest things. He began to court her, but Deirdre hated towards him never cooled. She would not look at him or speak to him, or acknowledge his presence in any way. She cast aside every gift he gave her and took no joy in the luxury surrounding her. He would come to sing outside her window, and he was famed for his beautiful voice, and she would shut the window, complaining of a horrible noise. After a year of this, Conor grew angry that all his kindness was being snubbed, and he came to her to ask her if there was any man in the world that she hated more than he. Deirdre said, "Well, I hate you with all my heart, but I hate Maen Ruhand a little more because he killed Naoise." So Conor said, "In that case, I'm going to give you Maen Ruhand for a year to do with as you please, and we'll see if you're any kinder to me after that." He sent for Maen Ruhand to come and take Deirdre away. They placed her in Maen's chariot, and Conor stood on one side of her and Maen on the other. On the way to Maen's country, Conor joked that she was helpless as a ewe between two rams. They passed by a place where the cliffs hung over the road, and Deirdre leaned her head out of the chariot and dashed her brains out against the rocks. She was buried in Aonmhacha, near where Naoise and his brothers lay. Conor could not bear the thought of them touching one another, even in death, and he had stakes of wood driven into the ground between the two graves. But the wood grew roots down into the graves, and two trees grew up and twined together. They were eventually united in death. Dian Cecht was a renowned member of the Tuatha De Danann, those who later became known as Ireland's pagan gods and goddesses. And many of them owe their life on account of his talents during the First Battle of Mythology, as the Tuatha De Danann tried to establish a palace for themselves in Ireland. Dian Cecht and his children were crucial in achieving that victory. It was by Dian Cecht's knowledge that a well of healing, containing all of the healing herbs and the healing words chanted over it. At the end of each day, warriors bearing even the most grievous of wounds would be placed into the well waters and come out completely healed, with their vigour fully restored. This was the ability that Dian Cecht brought to battle wounded warriors, restored and fit to fight fresh each day. When Lugh came to Tara to seek audience with Nuada, he was refused many times because there was someone greater in that skill already present. Dian Cecht is listed as the greatest leech physician in all of Ireland. Dian Cecht's abilities to go beyond herbalism and healing chants. He it was who saved Nuada from death when Shreng, the feared Bollock, cut his arm from him. It was also Dian Cecht's knowledge of anatomy, coupled with Creedon's skill in fine metals, that crafted Nuada's silver arm. This feat created a prosthesis with all the motions of the original hand, showed a great extent of Dian Cecht's abilities. If there's one thing Irish literature, folklore and mythology doesn't lack, it's tragic love stories. We've already had a look at Cleena, and for a more in-depth look, check out our video on Banshees, as Cleena was the queen of the Banshees. And we've had a look at Deirdre of Sorrows, Deirdre and Naoise. Another love story equally as tragic is that of Diarmid and Grania. Finn McCool, presumably at this stage, growing rather old and realising he was never going to find Sav again, we'll deal with Sav later on in the video, wanted to take himself a wife. And it was reported that the only woman up to the job, the only woman beautiful enough and high status enough for the job, was Grania. There was a slight problem. One of Finn's most powerful warriors was a man called Diarmid de Divna. Now, Diarmid was born with what a lot of guys would think is a blessing, but might realise very quickly is an affliction, and Diarmid did. He had a love spot in the middle of his forehead that made him irresistible to women. Now, he rather wisely early on realised that this could be a problem, so he generally kept it covered with his fringe. But when he was a young boy, playing hurling one day, his hair blew back, and Grania happened to catch sight of him and fell instantly in love with him. But in the interim period had never seen hide nor hair of him again. So when the king asked for her hand, she accepted. She was brought to the court, and she decided to spy and see what the king was like, to see if he'd be to her liking, because she knew he was getting on in years as well. When she looked, she first saw Cuchulainn and wondered why the king hadn't looked for her to marry his son rather than himself. That would have been a little more to her taste. But then Finn moved to the right and she caught sight of Diarmid. And that was it. There was no way she was marrying Finn. Now, she tried to get Diarmaid to run away with her, and at first he refused. Then she put him under a gassa to run away with her. Now a gassa is like a promise or an oath, and it's something that the warriors of that era couldn't refuse. So he couldn't refuse to run away with her. Needless to say, Finn wasn't too happy with this and set off in pursuit. Now, it happened that Angus, who we met earlier, who was the god of love, took a shine to the couple and kept helping them escape from Finn. Now, there was a few near misses. One where Diarmaid was hiding up a tree and kept dropping cherries onto the chessboard when Finn was playing chess against Uiscin to indicate where Uiscin should move to next. And Finn knew that the only person that could beat him was Diarmaid. But Angus managed to spirit them away again. After quite a few years had passed, and 4 children later for Diarmaid and Grania, Finn decided that that ship had sailed and it was time to bury the hatchet and let things go, although he did still hold a grudge. Now, another element to this story is that Diarmaid was also under a gassa not to pierce the skin of a pig. Now, he was out hunting with Finn and a wild boar, who actually was the son of somebody who had a grudge against him in the form of a boar, charged at Diarmaid. Now, Diarmaid couldn't pierce his skin and consequently was gored very badly. He eventually managed to beat the wild boar over the head with the hilt of his sword, not piercing its skin and killing it anyway. But by that stage he was mortally wounded. Now, Finn had a magic thumb that gave him all the knowledge in the world. It's another story that we're not going into in this video. You should look up the stories of Finn McCool, and this is the story of the Salmon of Knowledge. But anyway, it left him with a magic thumb. He scooped up some water, which would have been enough, given his magic thumb, to revive Diarmaid. But then it came back on him. Then his anger came back on him and he let the water run through his hands. He did it a second time and the water ran through his hands the second time. When he scooped it up the third time, all his anger had gone and he went to Diarmaid to give him the life-saving water. But at that stage, it was too late. So yeah, another love story in Irish mythology that didn't end well. The Dullahan is also known as the mythological headless horseman, is the embodiment of the Celtic god Crom Dubh. His is the story of the headless rider who roams the lands of Ireland looking for victims whose lives he intends to take. The Dullahan is one of the most well-known tales in Irish mythology, and the story became popular over time. In turn, the Headless Horseman has become a key character used in the mythology of many other cultures, as well as in modern horror stories. The Dullahan is most well known for his headless appearance, and there are many stories that suggest how he lost his head. One of which being that he was a soldier in his previous life and he had his head taken from him in battle. His Roman has been depicted as him searching for his lost head for all eternity. However, some stories suggest that he already has his head and that he rides with a darker purpose, believed to be so bitter about his own death that he searches for other souls to take with him to the afterlife. He is commonly portrayed as either riding on the back of a black horse, also headless, or riding a black carriage that is pulled by 6 horses. It is said that these horses ride so quickly and ferociously that fire emanates from both their nostrils and their hooves as they strike the ground. The carriage that some believe he rides in is made of coffins, tombstones and bones, indicating his evil attempt to take innocent life. He wears a long black cloak that flows behind him as he rides through the lands. and he is known to hold his severed head high into the sky in search of the souls he wishes to take. His severed head has a terrible appearance, covered in rotting flesh, and gives off the strong odour of rotting cheese, and with the complexion of stale dough. The mouth is split into a terrifying grin, and he finds joy in taking the lives of others. His eyes are lit up with an evil fire, and are darting back and forth constantly looking for his victims. No locked gate stays closed when he approaches, bursting open to let the Dullahan through. As he makes way through the towns and villages after dark, the people hide behind their curtains, because if anyone were to look at him, they would be immediately blinded. This he causes by whipping their eyes out with a whip made of human spine, or by throwing a basin of blood in their eyes. He has the ability to speak only once on a journey, and that is to say the name of the person whose life he wishes to take. Once the Dullahan states this name, the person's soul is called to death, and there is no defying the call. The Dullahan does this when he stops, and it's then that he will call the name of the victim, and his victim will die. The Dullahan is believed to appear after sunset on certain festivals and feast days, which is when people know to be wary of looking outside after the sun goes down. The only thing that can frighten him is precious metal, which when thrown on the ground before him can cause him and his horse to suddenly stop in their path and turn him free. During the period when the story of the Dullahan was most popular in Ireland, families were likely to possess gold. As such, they were told to use their gold to frighten him if he came to call on their house. In old Celtic tales, warrior poet Archetypal Mac Echt fought a great creature with 3 heads that breathed fire. The creature was Dian Cecht, roughly translated as a swarm of 3-headed creatures. The beast described as being something like a dragon with 3 avian heads. Many tales have been even more specific, describing these heads as vulture-like. The appearance of Dian Cecht is often preceded by a flock of red birds, so if scarlet feathers fall from the sky, clear the way for a monster on its way. A horde of goblins has also been reported to accompany the creature, with one goblin even riding it. If you can manage to dismount the rider, the reins are all yours. The beast is said to have destroyed full villages in a single breath, making it a formidable foe. Eru. Like Niamh Kinor, Eru came from the spiritual tribe of the Tuatha De Danann, although unlike Niamh, she's no link to Tír na nÓg. As the stories relate, the Tuatha De Danann arrived on the west coast of Ireland through a mystical fog, recognised as powerful gods and goddesses whose origin were of otherworldly realm. In Irish folklore, the Tuatha De Danann were a tribe of magical abilities, led by both powerful male and female leaders. While they honoured the difference between men and women, there was great equality in their society, leaving room for powerful female leaders, rulers and goddesses. It is said that Eru and her sisters were asked to represent the Tuatha De Danann when meeting the Milesians, a rival race who arrived in Ireland long after the Tuatha De Danann, intent on dominating the country. A patriarchal society, the Milesians were led by their druid Emergin. Eru and her sisters, with their intuitive powers, sensed the age of the Milesians was coming upon Ireland, and it was time for them to return through the spiritual vow. Emergin met the 3 sisters on top of Uisneach, a sacred hill in the heart of Ireland, where they requested that Emergin name Ireland after them. Eru's sovereign presence and connection to the land greatly impacted Emergin, so he named the land after her, leaving their powerful feminine legacy embedded in the land for future generations to come. In Irish poetry, Banba and Fola are occasionally referenced as alternative names for Ireland as well. Uisneach, the sacred hill where the meeting happened, is still considered sovereign ground to this day. Located in County Westmeath in the centre of Ireland, the hill of Uisneach is a very special place of cultural, spiritual, mythological and historical importance to Ireland. And it is one of the most sacred historic sanctuaries in the world. Today, a famous fire festival takes place on Uisneach each May to celebrate Bealtaine, one of the ancient Celtic festivals, to mark the start of spring and honour the goddess Eru. If you're ever in Ireland around May, it's something worth doing. On the sacred site, there's a famous catstone known in Irish as Éanna Marín, literally translates as the Stone of Divisions, under which Eru's final resting place is said to be located. Interestingly, modern Ireland's first female president, Mary Robinson, who was inaugurated in 1990, stated in her inspiring inaugurational speech, "The fifth province is not anywhere, here or there, north or south, east or west. It is a place within each of us, the place that is open to the other, that swinging door which allows us to venture out and others to venture in." Ancient legends divided Ireland into 4 quarters and a middle. Although they differed about the location of this middle or fifth province, where Tara was the political centre of Ireland, tradition has it that the fifth province acted as a second centre and necessary balance. If I'm a symbol of anything, I would like to be a symbol of this reconciling and healing fifth province. Fand. Fand is a fairy woman described as Pearl of Beauty, wife of Manannán mac Lir, the sea god. Her story is a small, intriguing part of the Ulster Cycle and the story of Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn, the great warrior, as he would sleep after hunting, had a vision of 2 women of the Tuatha De Danann, who would come and beat him till he was all but dead. The next day he would lie in bed with sore sickness and stay there for a year. He needed help. Then a man whom none knew came and told him to go to the pillar stone where he had seen the vision, and he would learn what was to be done for his recovery. There he found a Danann woman in green mantle, one of those who had chastised him, and she told him that Fand, the Pearl of Beauty, wife of Manannán the sea god, had set her love on him, and she was at enmity with her husband Manannán, and her realm was besieged by 3 demon kings against whom Cuchulainn's help was sought, and the price of his help would be the love of Fand. Lugh the charioteer was sent by Cuchulainn to report upon Fand and her message. He entered the land of the Shee, which lies beyond the lake across which he passed in a magic boat of bronze, and came home with report of Fand's surpassing beauty and the wonders of the kingdom, and Cuchulainn then betook himself hither. Here he had a battle in a dense mist with the demons who are described as resembling sea waves. No doubt we are to understand that they are the folk of the angry husband Manannán. Then he abode with Fand, enjoying all the delights of fairyland for a month, after which he bade her farewell and appointed a trysting place on earth, the stand of the yew tree, where she was to meet him. Emer, Cuchulainn's wife, was none too happy, as you can imagine, when she heard of the tryst, and assembled 50 of her maidens to slay Fand. Cuchulainn and Fand saw them coming, and he prepared to protect his mistress against these armed angry women with golden clasps at their breasts. He addresses Emer in a curious poem, describing the beauty and skill and magical power of Fand. "There's nothing the spirit can wish for that she has not got." Emer replies, "In good sooth, the lady to whom thou dost cling seems no way better than I am, but the new is ever sweet, and the well-known is sour. Thou hast all the wisdom of time, Cuchulainn. Once we dwelled in honour together, and still might dwell, if I could find favour in thy sights. By my word thou dost, says Cuchulainn, and shalt find it so long as I live." "Give me up then," said Fand, But Emer said, "Nay, it is more fitting that I be the deserted one." "Not so," said Fand, "it is I who must go." And an eagerness for lamentation seized upon Fand, and her soul was great within her. For it was shame for her to be deserted and straightway return to her home. Moreover, the mighty love that she bore to Cuchulainn was tumultuous in her. But Manannán, son of the sea, knew her sorrow and her shame, and he came to her aid, none seeing him but she alone. And she welcomed him in a mystic song. "Wilt thou return to me," said Manannán, "or abide with Cuchulainn?" "In truth," said Fand, "neither of you better or nobler than the other. But I will go with thee, Manannán, for thou hast no mate worthy of thee, but that Cuchulainn has in Emer." So she went to Manannán, and Cuchulainn, who did not see the god, asked Lear what was happening. "Fand," he replied, "is going away with the son of the sea, since she had been not pleasing in thy sight." Then Cuchulainn bounded in the air and fled from the place, and lay for a long time, refusing meat and drink, till the Druids gave him a drink of forgetfulness. There is a number of Irish mythical creatures with the first name Far, meaning man, usually followed by a colour. And the first one we will look at is the Far Darug. In Irish mythology, the Far Darug emerges as a curious, mischievous creature who is shrouded in mystery. Known for its red attire and playful demeanour, this enigmatic creature has captured the imagination of generations, leaving a trail of perplexing tales and legends in his wake. The name Far Darug itself holds significance, with far meaning man, as we said, or person, and Darug translating as red. Its name aptly describes the creature's appearance, often depicted wearing red clothing or adorned with fiery red hair. Its wee stature, akin to that of a leprechaun, adds to its elusive charm. While the Far Darug shares some characteristics with its counterparts in Irish folklore, such as the leprechaun, it distinguishes itself through its fondness for mischief and trickery. Unlike the solitary and wealth-obsessed leprechaun, the Far Darug delights in playing pranks on unsuspecting humans, often under the cover of darkness. In Ireland there are countless tales of encounters with the Far Darug, each weaving a narrative of perplexing twists and turns. One common theme is its role as a shapeshifter, appearing to travellers in need of guidance, only to lead them astray or into risky circumstances. Its ability to manipulate perception and misdirect wanderers adds to an unpredictability of its antics. As with many figures in Irish mythology, the depiction of the Far Darug varies from region to region in Ireland. In some areas, it is portrayed as a more spiteful being capable of wreaking havoc on households and farms. In others, it retains a more playful nature, content to engage in harmless pranks. Beyond its role as a trickster, the Far Darug holds deeper symbolic meaning within Irish folklore. Some interpretations suggest that it embodies the fickle nature of fate, reminding humans of the unpredictability of life's journey. Others view it as a representation of the wild and untamed aspect of the natural world, existing on the fringes of human understanding. Despite its origins in ancient folklore, the allure of the Far Darug continues to captivate audiences all over the world. Its presence is felt in various forms of media, from literature and art to film, such as the 2022 movie Unwelcome, where it serves as a reminder of Ireland's rich cultural heritage. In today's interconnected world, the legend of the Far Darug serves a bridge between past and present, connecting generations through a timeless art of storytelling. The Far Lia is a Gaelic name for a grey man. In Hiberno-Irish folklore, it refers to a malevolent fairy associated with fog and mists. He is a personification of the fog, obscuring paths and causing accidents. On Far Lia Moor, the grey man is a similar figure associated with the Cairngorm, specifically the summit and passes of Ben Macdui. Far Durcha, also known as the Dark Man, is a powerful servant dedicated to the Fairy Queen. He might perform her menial domestic tasks, or on the Queen's orders ride his black horse to our realm to capture mortal who has taken her fancy. Although he is always silent, the dark man can make any human surrender their wills to his command, and they climb onto the back of his steed without protest. His fairy horse exhales fire from its nostrils as it races through the night, setting alight hedgerows across the countryside from the speed of their passage. Almost always, the mortal's journey to the land of the fairies is a one-way trip. Among the fairy folk who wander the mists and glimmerings of Irish folklore, there are few feared as the Far Gorta, whose name means the hungry man. When hunger stalks the lands, it does so as a hound following the footsteps of the Far Gorta, a solitary, gaunt and masterless spirit of emaciated appearance. Now this fairy is not to be confused with the Fear Gorta, or hungry grass, which is a separate but related thing, a patch of land accursed by the Sidhe, covered in grass, that would cause anyone who stepped on it to starve to death, no matter how much they ate. They could fill their bellies over and over again, to no avail, eventually withering away to a husk. Some say the Far Gorta would rise up from these patches of grass when inhuman acts and the desecration of sacred places became common, although others held he was a wandering spirit of one who starved to death near the Sidhe Hill. In any case, his tale is a very ancient one. Keeping a crust of bread in your pocket, or sprinkling crumbs of oaten bread over a hungry grass would protect you from its ill effects, and salting and burning the field would set it off for good, but there was no such protection from the hungry man. If one of these creatures came to your door asking for some food, you'd be as well to give it him, and you might know him by his greenish hue of his skin and the begging bowl which would fall from his fingers too weak to lift it. Dressed in rags he would be, with long dirty nails. Although he was much feared, if he was fed he could be generous and benefactrous. Woe betide those who sought to mock or attack him, however, for he retaliated without mercy, cursing antagonists with bad luck and hunger to the end of their days. He has made kings into paupers and beggars into princes. Regardless of the individual blessing or curses he may bestow, the Far Gorta is always a harbinger of famine, disaster and despair. Just before the Great Famine, it is said that he came forth from the battle of fairies which took place. Hercules, Achilles, Thor, King Arthur, Beowulf, Gilgamesh, Maui. Chances are you've heard of all, or at least most of these. But what about Finn McCool? The Irish among you are certainly familiar with Finn McCool, who is without doubt one of the most famous warriors of Irish mythology. Finn was a hunter who was intelligent as he was strong. He fought many battles using both the power of his mind and his celebrated fighting abilities. The stories and tales about Finn tend to be narrated by Oisin, Finn's son. Finn was the son of Cúl, once leader of the Fianna, and Myrna, and was from the province of Leinster. We're given an insight into Finn's early life, the boyhood deeds of Finn, and we learn that there was immense wisdom came from the story of the Salmon of Knowledge. One of my favourite stories involving Finn, the one that surrounds his birth and the mayhem that led up to it. This is as good a starting point as for many looking to dip their toe into Fianna mythology, as it sets many of the scenes to follow. The story of the birth of Finn begins with Taig MacNuad, Finn's grandfather. Taig was a druid, which was a high-ranking class in the ancient world of the Celts. Druids were often religious leaders. Now Taig lived up the hill of Almu, and he had a beautiful daughter named Myrna. Myrna's beauty was known across Ireland, and her hand was sought by many. One of those pursuing her hand in marriage was Cúl, the leader of the Fianna. Taig denied every man that request to marry his daughter due to a vision. Taig had foresaw that if Myrna was married, he would lose his ancestral seat. When Cúl visited Taig and requested his blessing, Taig refused. Cúl, who was used to getting his own way, was enraged and kidnapped Myrna. Tig sent messages of what had happened to the High King, who declared Cuchulainn's actions unlawful and sent men to pursue him and return Myrna to her father. Cuchulainn was eventually killed in battle by Gul MacCorna, who went on to become the leader of the Fianna. However, by this time, Myrna was already pregnant. She tried to return to her father, but he disowned her. Fionn was soon born, and as you'll see in the many tales about him, he became a great warrior. Myrna left Fionn with a druidess called Boann and a woman named Lugh Lamfada, who became his foster mother. His mother only saw him once again when he was 6. When he grew up, it wasn't long before he took the leadership of the Fianna from Gul, the man who killed his father. Some of the greatest legends from Irish folklore involve the tales of Fionn's adventures around Ireland and are worth checking out. The Salmon of Knowledge, the Giant's Causeway, the Pursuit of Diarmid and Grana, which we've already touched on, and Oisin and the Tale of Tiernan Og, which we will come to later. Govnu, a revered figure in Irish mythology, is celebrated as a divine smith and craftsman, known for his unmatched skill in forging metal weapons and his talent as a brewer, which always goes down well in Ireland. Govnu embodied the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the Tuatha De Danann. His contributions to both art of war and the creation of sustenance makes him a central figure in Celtic lore, revered as a god of creativity, magic and abundance. Govnu is one of the most important deities of the Tuatha De Danann. His name is derived from the Old Irish word gova, meaning smith, highlighting his role as a master craftsman. Govnu's expertise extends beyond smithing to encompass brewing and magic, making him a multifaceted god whose influence touches the practical and the mystical realms. He is often regarded as a divine figure who safeguards his people through innovation and the mastery of transformative art. Govnu is most famously known for his role as divine smith, the god of magic, forging weapons of unparalleled quality for the Tuatha De Danann. These weapons were not only exquisitely crafted, but imbued with magical properties, ensuring victory for those who wielded them. In Celtic mythology, Govnu's forge is a place of both creation and transformation, where raw materials are turned into tools of power and protection. This aspect of Govnu underscores the significance of craftsmanship as a sacred and transformative act. To this day, the connection between the smith and magic or luck is still strong. Many brides carry a representation of the horseshoe as part of their bouquet for luck. Creating beautiful and useful objects out of bare rock was certainly akin to magic. One of Govnu's most remarkable feats is his ability to craft weapons that never miss their mark. His craftsmanship is legendary, and the weapons he forges are said to be unbreakable, ensuring the Tuatha De Danann's supremacy in battle. This unparalleled skill underscores Govnu's role as a protector of his people, using his talent to secure their safety and success. These weapons, forged in the magical forge, were considered blessings of divine intervention, blending practical with the supernatural. In the epic tale of the Second Battle of Moy Tuatha, Govnu plays a critical role in the Tuatha De Danann's victory over the Fomorians, a race of oppressive monstrous beings. The forge becomes a vital resource, producing weapons that empowers the gods to triumph against their foes. The battle highlights not only his technical expertise, but also his contribution to the larger narrative of resistance and renewal in Celtic mythology. Govnu's unwavering dedication to his craft directly impacts the survival and success of his people. Govnu's talents are not limited to forging weapons. He's also celebrated as a master brewer. In Celtic lore, he is credited with crafting magical ale that grants immortality to those who drink it. That would be interesting to have now. This divine brew, served at the feasts of the gods, symbolises abundance, vitality, and eternal renewal of life. The ale represents not just sustenance, also the spiritual nourishment required to maintain divine power and unity among the Tuatha De Danann. Brewing held a significant place in Celtic culture, serving as a symbol of hospitality, community and celebration. Govinda's role as a divine brewer underscores his importance, not just in warfare but in the social, spiritual fabric of his people. His magical ale reflects the interconnectedness of sustenance, community and the divine. Feasts held in his honour were not merely occasions of indulgence, but acts of communion that strengthened bonds within the community and with the divine. A kelpie or water kelpie is a mythical shape-shifting spirit inhabiting lochs in Scottish and Irish folklore. Legends of these shape-shifting water horses under various names spread across the British Isles, appearing in the Northern Isles, Irish, Manx, Northern English and Welsh folklore. It is usually described as a grey or white, horse-like creature, able to adopt human form. Some accounts state that the kelpie retains its hooves when appearing as a human, leading to its association with the Christian idea of Satan, as alluded to by Robert Burns in his 1786 poem addressed to the devil. Almost every sizable body of water in Scotland has an associated kelpie story, but the most extensively reported is that of the Loch Ness. The kelpie has counterparts across the world, such as the Germanic nixie, or the weewin in Central America, and the Australian bunyip. The origins of narratives about the creature are unclear, but the practical purpose of keeping children away from dangerous stretches of water and warning young women to be wary of handsome strangers has been noted in secondary literature. The leprechaun is one of Ireland's most famous characters in Irish folklore. They have become renowned all over the world. The mischievous Irish leprechaun has captured the imagination of millions of people over the years, with tales from some of how they sighted these wee folk in the Irish countryside. The leprechaun is part of Irish mythology and folklore that falls under the topic of the fairy folk, also known as wee folk, or the little people. They are members of the Tuatha De Danann, a race of supernatural beings in ancient Irish mythology, who invaded Ireland and were banished to live in the other world known as Tir na Og. Standing 2 to 3 feet tall, leprechauns are a devious character. They are quick-witted, highly intelligent, and will do anything to evade capture. Usually depicted as a small bearded man wearing a green coat and hat. They originally wore red coats. The green clothing became more popular with Ireland's association with the colour green in the 20th century. As a cousin of the Cuchulainn, the leprechaun is known to have inhabited Ireland before the arrival of the Celts and could survive hundreds of years. Some consider leprechauns to be the true natives of Ireland who are descended from Irish royalty. Leprechauns can only be found in Ireland in remote rural areas, often in underground caves and hollow trees. They prefer to remain hidden from humans and are said to lead solitary lives, burrow deep in the underground caves with entrances hidden as rabbit holes or found in a hollow trunk of a fairy tree. They find safety away from humans who seek to capture them to be granted 3 wishes. In Irish folklore, if you capture a leprechaun, he may offer you 3 wishes or lead you to his pot of gold. But this comes with a warning. Leprechauns are known to use clever tricks and deceit to escape without ever getting any rewards. Catching one of these wee folks is no easy task, and it's often discouraged. They're quick, smart, and have magical powers to vanish into thin air. But they can be caught. People do tell stories of their experience in catching a leprechaun and getting their 3 wishes. Be cautious of such claims. People tend to tell fibs about how they caught them. The leprechaun is well known for their love of Irish music and traditional dance. They'll often hold céilís that can last for days, and expert musicians when it comes to playing Irish instruments like the tin whistle, the fiddle, the bodhrán, and even the harp. They are considered to be the only fairy to have a trade. which is that of shoemaking. It is believed that because leprechauns dance so much, they are always in need of new shoes. The famous Irish writer and poet W.B. Yeats is quoted as saying, because of their love of dancing, the Fae will constantly need shoes. Yeats goes on to tell the story of a woman who had been spirited away by the fairies. She'd been returned 7 years later, minus her toes. She had danced them off. You'll hear an Irish leprechaun before you'll see one. If you're ever out in rural countryside and you hear tap, 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 it's usually the sound of them hammering nails into the soles of the shoe. But try to find whoever is making the noise is next to impossible. Leprechauns are neither fully good nor evil. They're tricksters, known for their mischief and love of pranks. While not malevolent, they can be cunning and difficult to outsmart, especially when protecting their gold. There is a misconception that leprechauns are drunkards, however. They do have a fondness of drinking poteen. It would be unfair to mistake them for their Irish cousins, the Cuchulainn's, a drunken creature who loves to cause chaos around Ireland during the night. Leban's story dates from the 6th century Ireland and has been preserved not only in medieval writing, but also in the oral tradition of Scéalach storytelling, passed on from generation to generation. The Annals of the Four Masters, compiled by Irish monks in the 17th century, tells of a wondrous happening in the year 558. In this year was taken the mermaid Leban in the net of Boann, son of Inley, the fisherman, of Cuchulainn of Banachir. The annals also record that Leban was baptized by Cuchulainn and given the name Wergen, which means born of the sea. But her story begins 300 years earlier. Leban was the daughter of Eanchic, king of Ulster. She and her pet dog were the only ones to survive when Eanchic's palace and lands were flooded, drowning all who lived there and forming the great body of water we know today as Lough Neagh. For a year she lived alone in a bower under the loch with only her dog for company. Then in her loneliness she prayed to the goddess Danu, asking to be turned into a salmon so that she might swim with the fish of the sea for company. Danu only half granted her wish. The little dog became an otter and Leban was turned into a mermaid. Leban swam out of the loch along the great river and into the open sea, and there she drifted for the next 300 years, fulfilling the prophecy. Leban will swim eastward, westward, hither, thither, over each sea. By the time 300 years had passed, Cuchulainn had founded a great monastery in what is now Bangor, County Down. It was known as Bangor Moor, and soon became revered throughout Ireland for its saintliness and learning. Young men came from every corner of the land to study there. It happened that one day Cuchulainn sent Boann and some other monks to Rome with a message for Pope Gregory, and while they were at sea, Boann caught Leban in his fishing net. She promised to return within 1 year. When a year passed, she came ashore, and Cuchulainn baptized her with the name Wergen. She died not long after, Cuchulainn having promised her a heavenly reward, and she became known as the Mermaid Saint. You can still find memories and stories of Leban today. The ancient abbey is long gone, but if you go to Bangor, you will find the new abbey where Cuchulainn is still remembered. A handsome quilt hangs on the transept wall, and in one of its squares you'll find the Mermaid Saint floating on the crest of a wave. In the rich tapestry of Irish mythology, few figures stand out as prominently as Lugh, a deity renowned for his multifaceted roles and profound impact on the ancient tales of Ireland. A member of the Tuatha De Danann, the pantheon of pre-Christian gods, Lugh is celebrated for his mastery over numerous skills, making him a symbol of versatility, intelligence and leadership. His significance in Irish mythology can't be overstated. He's a warrior of unmatched prowess, a skilled craftsman, a benevolent king, and a guardian of his people. Lugh's stories are interwoven with themes of heroism, sacrifice, and the cyclical nature of life and death, embodying the complex relationships between humans and the divine in Celtic lore. Through festivals, folklore, and the enduring legacy of ancient manuscripts, Lugh's presence permeates the cultural and spiritual landscape of Ireland, illustrating the enduring resonance of his character. Lugh's lineage is complex and fascinating as the deity himself, rooted in the mythical histories of Ireland, divine and formidable races. He was born to Cuchulainn, a member of the Tuatha De Danann and a skilled healer, and Ethniu, the daughter of Baelor, a tyrannical leader of the Fomorians. The union between the two warring factions, the Tuatha De Danann being of skill and civilization, and the Fomorians, often depicted as chaotic forces of nature, symbolises Lugh's inherited capacity to bridge divides and embody a wide array of powers and virtues. The circumstances of Lugh's birth were shrouded in prophecy and intrigue. Baelor was foretold to meet his end at the hands of his own grandson, leading him to imprison Ethniu in an attempt to thwart this destiny. However, the intervention of Cuchulainn, aided by the Druid Spirog, led to the conception of Lugh. To protect the child from Baelor's wrath, Lugh was spirited away and raised by foster parents, including Taltu, a former queen of the Fir Bolg. This early life, marked by hidden identity and the nurturing of latent potential, sets the stage for Lugh's later achievements and challenges. From these remarkable beginnings, Lugh emerges as a figure of significant power and complexity. His ancestry endowed him with attributes from both the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians, illustrating the duality of creation and destruction, order and chaos that he could wield. The prophecies surrounding his birth and rise to prominence underscore the Celtic belief in the inevitability of fate and the interconnectedness of all things, themes that resonate deeply in the stories of Lugh and the broader corpus of Irish mythology. Lugh is known by several epithets and titles, each reflecting a different facet of his vast repertoire of skills and attributes. These names not only highlight his multifarious talents, but also his esteemed status among the pantheon of Celtic gods. Understanding these titles offers a glimpse into the rich cultural and religious fabric of ancient Ireland, showcasing Lugh's significance in various aspects of life and the natural world. Lugh Lamfada translates as long arm or long hand. The epithet underscores Lugh's extraordinary prowess as a warrior, specifically his unmatched skill with a spear that could reach enemies from afar. Beyond its literal martial implications, long arm also symbolises Lugh's far-reaching influence and the ability to offer protection and guidance over great distances, embodying his role as guardian deity. Lugh stands out in Irish mythology not only for his heroic deeds, but for his extraordinary range of skills and talents, making him a deity revered across various domains of life and nature. His arrival at Tara, the seat of the High Kings of Ireland, and the subsequent demonstration of his abilities is a tale that encapsulates the essence of multifaceted character. Lugh's martial skills are legendary, with his epithet Lugh Lamfada underscoring his expertise in wielding a spear. Beyond mere physical prowess, Lugh's strategic acumen in warfare is evident in his leadership during the Second Battle of Moytura, where he orchestrated the defeat of the formidable Fomorians. His role as a warrior deity extends to his guardianship over his people, embodying the protective force that champions the cause of justice and righteousness. Lugh's talents were not confined to the battlefield. His craftsmanship is celebrated, particularly in the creation and wielding of a magical spear, one of the Tuatha De Danann's treasured possessions. This aspect of his skill set highlighted a deeper connection to the elements and the ability to harness their power for the benefit of his people, embodying the synthesis of creativity and utility that characterizes the best of crafts. Ascending to the role of High King after the death of Nuada, Lugh's leadership is characterised by wisdom, fairness, and an unwavering dedication to the prosperity of his realm. His reign is often depicted as a golden era, marked by peace, fertility, and abundance, reflecting his capacity to bring harmony and balance to the natural and social order. The Second Battle of Moy Tuatha is one of the most defining myths involving Lugh, marking his ascendance as leader and a warrior par excellence among the Tuatha De Danann. Macha was an Irish war goddess and linked to the land. Macha was the wife of Cuchulainn. She is thought to be one aspect of the triple goddess, the Morrigan. Macha is associated with both horses and crows. They often appeared at the scene of a battle, disguised as a raven or other bird, and took a decisive role in the battle. There were three elements in Macha. The first was the maternal, reproductive part, the second the agrarian element, and the third was the element of sexual fertility. All three parts combine to form Mother Goddess, figure based on war and fertility. As goddess of the land, they are said to be cognate with Anya and Danu, and Macha is said to be one of the Tuatha De Danann. The most famous part of the Macha legend was a race in which she ran while pregnant. It is said that she went to the house of Cleena, the farmer, and circled on the flagstones outside his house 3 times before entering the dwelling and embarking on an affair with him. Macha became pregnant, and later, in a conversation with the king of Ulster, Cleena boasted that Macha could outrun any horse. The king demanded to see this put to the test, despite the protestations of Macha. She appealed for a delay until she had given birth, but the king refused, and she was forced to compete. One version of the tale states that she died after the race, giving birth to twins. In her dying pain and anger, she cursed the men of Ulster 9 times, 9 generations, that in their time of worst peril they should suffer the pains of childbirth. Macha combined many elements, some associated with Mother Goddess, such as the power to offer fertility. She was also able to take such gifts away, leaving suffering behind. Monán mac Lear. In his most popular incarnation, Monán is a member of Ireland's divine tribe, the Tuatha De Danann, and he's the possessor of many supernatural imbued objects and animals. I should also mention that after the Tuatha De Danann are defeated by the invading Milesians, who are the final race of beings to settle in Ireland, according to the Larg of All Éireann, or Book of Talking of Ireland, commonly known as the Book of Invasions. It is Monán who is tasked with assigning the Tuatha De nobles the She or mounds they will henceforth inhabit. To help them stay hidden from prying eyes, Monán provided his fellow gods with the Fé Fiadha, which is a magical mist of invisibility. Monán mac Lear's penchant for weather manipulation is also seen in a chronologically earlier story in which it is inferred that sea storms were caused by the horses of the son of Lear. Our ancient ancestors lacked scientific knowledge of certain phenomena, imagined that storms rolling in off the sea must have had a divine cause, like the thunderous hooves of the gods' horses. Now, in addition to being the ruler of the sea and its storms, and the divine estate agent for the Tuatha De Danann, Monán is the ruler of the Celtic otherworld, or one of the Celtic otherworlds anyway. In Mythological Cycle, the tale of the coming of Lugh, Monán's domain is referred to as Tir na Og, the land of the youth. This is where Monán trains his foster son, the god of many talents, Lugh, and outfits him with all sorts of weapons and armour ahead of the Second Battle of Moy Tuatha. Ireland is a land full of folklore and legends. Many popular ones are known worldwide, for example, banshees, leprechauns and fairies. But another almost forgotten in our modern society is that of the Merrow, who legend has it frolicked in the cold waters of the Celtic seas. Merrow, from the Irish Muirich, is a mermaid or merman who needs a magical cap in its possession in order to travel between deep water and dry land. In the land of the ancient Celts, they were described as beautiful mortal women swimming in the sea. However, the surface of the water hid the fish-like tails of these strange supernatural creatures. Sailors and fishermen found the Merrow irresistible, especially when the sea fairies combed their silken hair. The comb was a magical symbol of feminine power in Celtic mythology. The term Merrow applies to both the male and female of the species. They are said to dwell in Tír Faoi Thun, the land beneath the waves. Merrow men were said to be hideously ugly, to the point that the mermaids refused to take them as mates. Little is known about the Merrow except that their bodies were covered in emerald scales with stunted limbs and green hair. It is said they are so bitter over their appearances and loneliness that they capture the spirits of drowned sailors and keep them incarcerated under the sea in a desperate attempt at revenge. Merrow women, on the other hand, were beautiful, with long radiant hair and glistening scales on their tails. They preferred the company of human men to those of the hideous species. Many human men have been seduced by these mythical creatures over time. Those with the surnames of O'Flaherty, O'Sullivan in County Kerry and County Clare are believed to be descendants from such unions. It was said that in order to keep these beautiful creatures on land, the human mate would need to take the Merrow's magical cap before she could enchant them with her song, or their soul was captured forever to be held in a cage beneath the waves. When this cap was taken from her and hidden, she could not return to the sea. To possess her cap meant that you held great power over her, and the human could persuade her to marry them. However, the yearning was so strong that these creatures would find their cap and return to the land below the waves. The cap holds the power of the Merrow and enables them to live under the ocean. Such unions with humans were destined to be short-lived, and the Merrow would drag her suitor back with her beneath the waves. The Morrigan is the goddess of battle, strife and fertility. Her name translates as Phantom Queen, which is entirely appropriate for her. The Morrigan frequently appears in the guise of a hooded crow. She is one of the Tuatha De Danann, and she helped defeat the Firbolgs at the First Battle of Moytura and the Formai at the Second Battle of Moytura. By some accounts, she is the consort of the Dagda. The origins of the Morrigan seems to reach directly back to the megalithic cult of the Mothers. The Mothers usually appeared as triple goddesses, and their cult was expressed through both battle ecstasy and regenerative ecstasy. Later Celtic goddesses of sovereignty, such as the trio of Éire, Banba and Fola, also use magic in warfare. Influence in the sphere of warfare, but by means of magic and incantation rather than through physical strength, is common to these beings. Éire is a goddess connected with the land in a fashion reminiscent of the Mothers. Could appear as a beautiful woman or a crow, as could Morrigan. In addition to being a battle goddess, they are significantly associated with fate as well as birth in many cases, along with appearing before the dead or to escort the deceased. It is interesting to note that some sources present Éire and the Morrigan as half-sisters. The Morrigan's role in Irish cosmology is quite similar to the role played by the Valkyries in Norse cosmology. Both use magic to cast fetters on warriors and choose who will die. During the second battle, the Morrigan said she would go and destroy Indech, son of Dedan, and deprive him of the blood of his heart and the kidneys of his valour. And she gave 2 handfuls of that blood to the host. When Indech later appeared in the battle, he was already doomed. Compare this to the Washer at the Ford, another guise of the Morrigan. The Washer is usually to be found washing clothes of men about to die in battle. In effect, she chooses who will die. An early German spell found that Merseburg mentioned the Indisi, who decided the fortunes of war and fates of warriors. The Scandinavian Song of the Spear, quoted in Jarl Saga, gives a detailed description of Valkyries as women weaving on a grisly loom with severed heads for weights, arrows for shuttles, and entrails for warp. As they walked, they exulted the loss of life that would take place. All is sinister now to see. A cloud of blood moves over the sky. The air is red with blood of men, and the battle women chant their song. An old English poem, Exodus, refers to ravens as choosers of the slain. There are links between ravens choosing of the slain, casting fetters, and female beings in many sources. We see the story of Cuchulainn. The function of the goddess was not to attack the hero with weapons, but render him helpless at a crucial point in the battle. Like the Valkyries, who cast fetters upon warriors. So both in Irish and Scandinavian literature, we have a conception of female beings associated with battle, both fierce and erotic. She appeared to hero Cuchulainn, son of the god Lugh, and offered her love to him. When he failed to recognize her and rejected her, she told him she would hinder him when he was in battle. When Cuchulainn was eventually killed, she settled on his shoulder in the form of a crow. Cu's misfortune was that he never recognized the feminine power of sovereignty that she offered him. Fergus MacLeody, the King of Ulster, was an inveterate swimmer. Captured while sleeping by water spirits, the Lucapan, or small bodies. He was awoken by the cold water they tried to carry him into. This allowed him to turn the tables on his would-be captors, and he seized 3 of the Lucapan. Fergus demanded that the sprites give him 3 wishes. The ability to breathe underwater, in seas, pools, and lakes. The sprites granted him his wish in the form of an enchanted earplugs and a tunic to wear around his head. But like all wishes granted by the fair folk, it came with a caveat. Fergus was not to use his gift at Loch Rudridge, Dundrum Bay, in his own land of Ulster. Of course, Fergus arrogantly disregarded the rules and swims underwater at Loch Rudridge anyway. There he encounters the Murders, the sea bramble or sea briar, a huge, mysterious, undefined horror that inflates and deflates, expands and contracts like it bellows. It has the features of a thorn bush with branches and stings, and its appearance alone is deadly. Fergus does not take well to his encounter with the Murders, and he is horribly disfigured after seeing it, with his mouth moving to the back of his head. His courtiers are dismayed, as a man with a blemish cannot be king, but they somehow keep his defacement a secret from Fergus for 7 years. They prevent him from accessing mirrors and surround him only with people who will protect the king's deformity. He finds out only after Dorn, a highborn slave, taunts him about it after he strikes her with a whip. She is bisected for her troubles, and Fergus goes to face his nemesis alone. The battle between Fergus and the Murders lasts a day and a night, during which the water of the loch bubbles like a giant cauldron. Finally, Fergus slays the monster with his bare hands and emerges from the loch, holding its head in triumph, only to collapse and die from the ordeal. A 13th century retelling of Fergus' tribulations renames the monster Seanoch or Sinach. In this version, it is the king's wife who reveals his secret after an argument. The Murders is a monster, but it is rooted in fact. Surely the expansion and contraction and the comparison to a thorn bush and the disfiguring sting strongly suggest a large jellyfish, perhaps the lion's mane jellyfish. A powerful and adventurous woman, Niamh is the most famous figure from the Tír pantheon. Niamh is from the Tuatha De Danann tribe. Niamh's connections with the island of Ireland is best described in the story of Niamh and Uiscin. Niamh adventured to Ireland across the Atlantic Ocean on her magical white horse, coming across Uiscin and the Fianna tribe when she reached the Irish shores. Niamh and Uiscin instantly fell in love. Niamh asked Uiscin to return to Tir na Nog to get married. He agreed to go with her, and they lived joyfully in Tir na Nog for 3 years. However, Uiscin grew homesick and wished to depart the magical realm to visit his family in Ireland. Niamh begged him not to leave, but eventually relented and gave him her white horse to cross the water to Ireland. She warned him not to set foot on Irish soil, as she couldn't protect him outside the magical realm. However, when Uiscin reached Ireland, he could not find his tribe. Locals told him the Fianna had left hundreds of years prior, and Uiscin learned that 300 years had passed in Ireland during the 3 years he lived in Tir na Nog. Uiscin saw a group of Irishmen struggle to move a large rock and leant down to help him. Unfortunately for him, the bridle on his horse broke and he fell off his horse, touching Irish soil. Uiscin immediately became a withered old man. He died a few days later on Irish soil, never to see Niamh again on the human plane. Nuada Argeadlan is often referred to as Nuada of the Silver Hand. Is one of the most significant figures in Irish mythology, particularly within the Pantheon of the Tuatha De Danann. As a warrior king and a symbol of resilience and leadership, Nuada's stories are interwoven with themes of honour, restoration, and the enduring spirit of the ancient Irish people. Nuada is a member of the Tuatha De Danann. According to the mythological traditions, the Tuatha De Danann descended from the goddess Danu, and Nuada himself was born from this divine lineage. His father was Cecht, and his lineage traced back to powerful deities and the legendary ancestors, underscoring his royal and divine heritage. Nuada's story is more famously associated with the battles of Moy Tuatha, where the Tuatha De Danann fought to establish and maintain their domain over Ireland. The first battle of Moy Tuatha was fought against the Fair Bullock, the inhabitants of Ireland, before the arrival of the Tuatha De Danann. In this battle, Nuada proved his prowess as a warrior and leader, but also suffered a grievous injury. His hand was severed in combat. According to the laws and customs of the time, a king must be physically whole to rule, and thus Nuada was forced to relinquish his kingship. This event set the stage for one of the most remarkable episodes in his story, the creation of a silver hand. The loss of Nuada's hand was a critical moment in his life, leading to both his temporary dethronement and his eventual restoration. The healing god Dian Cecht, along with his son Miach and daughter Armed, crafted a prosthetic hand made from silver for Nuada. The hand was not merely a symbolic replacement, but a functional limb that allowed Nuada to regain his physical integrity and consequently his kingship. However, the story takes a tragic turn with Miach's role in the creation of the silver hand. Miach displayed extraordinary skill, later transformed the silver hand into a fully functional flesh and blood hand. This act showcasing Miach's superior healing abilities led to jealousy and rivalry. Dian Cecht, unable to bear being outdone by his son, killed Miach, a tragedy that added a complex layer of familial conflict to the narrative. Despite this turmoil, Nuada's restoration with the silver hand solidified his epithet, Argeadlan, and established him as a symbol of resilience and recovery. His return to kingship demonstrated the value and adaptability and the importance of technological and magical advances in overcoming physical limitations. The Second Battle of Moy Tuatha is another pivotal event in Nuada's story. The battle was fought against the Fomorians, a race of formidable and monstrous beings who sought to subjugate the Tuatha De Danann. The Fomorians were led by Baelor, a giant with a deadly eye that could kill anyone it gazed upon. Nuada, now restored as king, led his people in preparation for this formidable conflict. Recognising the need for a champion with unparalleled skills, he sought out Lugh, a young warrior with extraordinary talents. Lugh's arrival at Tara, the seat of the Tuatha De Danann, marking a turning point in the battle preparations. According to legend, Nuada willingly stepped aside to allow Lugh to lead the Tuatha De Danann in battle, recognising the young warrior's potential. This act of selflessness and strategic foresight underscores Nuada's wisdom as a leader who prioritised the welfare of his people over personal glory. In the ensuing battle, Lugh defeated Baelor, and the Tuatha De Danann emerged victorious. Nuada's role in recognising and supporting Lugh's leadership was crucial to this victory, highlighting his ability to recognise talent and make decisions for the greater good. Nuada Argeadlam's legacy extended beyond his martial prowess and leadership. His story embodies themes of resilience, adaptability, and transformative power of technology and magic. The silver hand is a powerful symbol of overcoming adversity and restoring wholeness through innovation. Nuada's willingness to step down temporarily, first due to his injury and later to allow Lugh to lead, demonstrates a profound understanding of leadership that values the collective well-being over individual power. This characteristic makes him a revered figure, not only in mythology, but also in the cultural memory of the Irish people. It's an awful pity that we don't have leaders of that calibre today. The story of Nuada also reflects the importance of physical integrity and the belief in a ruler's need to be whole and healthy to govern effectively. This aspect of the myth can be seen as an allegory for the interconnectedness of physical health and leadership abilities, the theme that resonates in many cultures and historical contexts. As a figure of mythology, Nuada embodies the complexities of kingship and the interplay of physical and spiritual integrity. His influence extends beyond the realm of myth into modern interpretations and cultural narratives, ensuring that his story remains a source of inspiration and admiration. Through the lens of Nuada's experience, we gain insight into the values and ideals that shape the Tuatha De Danann and continue to inspire us today. In the story of the Tuatha De Danann, people of Danu, we come across several of the Celtic gods and goddesses who are children of Danu and are destined to populate the world. Dagda and Danu had many sons and daughters, of which one was named Ogma, whom was the fairest of the sons of Danu. To him came the gift of poetic prowess and the ability to write. It was often said that rays of sun would beam from his hair, and as Peter Berfus Ellis says in his book The Chronicles of the Celt, he was called Ogma Grainneach of the sunny countenance. So gifted, in fact, was this god that he thought of a way for man to write speech in what was named after him, Ogham. This gift brought down from the rays of Ogma's sunny countenance. Ogma also was said to have conceived many languages and poetry in which he taught humans by way of rays of light. This inspiration from Ogma has ever since been known as Eowyn, and is often invoked by bards and poets alike. From the family of Ogma came 3 sisters, whom were said to be the wives of Ogma's sons. The names of these women were Banba, Folkla, and Éire. It was promised to these women that the one who could predict what would happen to the Tuatha De Danann upon reaching the shores of Inishfal would have their name placed on the land forever, and all would call the land by this name. So it became that Éire's prediction of the events to befall the Tuatha De Danann was most accurate, and as promised, Ogma named the land as Éire, and all who have come thereafter have called this land as such, and have Éire, Ogma, and the Tuatha De Danann to thank for it. This is the story of the god of speech and language, and there are many versions of this story indeed. Hi, I left this till quite late in the video, because if you've arrived at this stage in the video, my book might be something that might interest you. Because if you've arrived at this stage in the video, you obviously have an interest in Irish mythology and history. My book, The Chosen, basically takes Irish mythology and puts it in a real world historical context. It's about a young witch out gathering herbs in 1798 in Wexford while the rebellion is going on in the background. She helps a young rebel who's trying to escape, and this leads her into the realms of the Tuatha De Danann and the adventure that follows, where the Tuatha De Danann and the Fomorians, through human proxies, fight out their battle in the real world against the backdrop of the 1798 rebellion and the Napoleonic era. So if that's the type of book that interests you, The Chosen, I will leave a link down below to the Amazon page, both the European, the Irish, the British, and the American site where you can get it. And if you do, I hope you enjoy the read. Tales of sea monsters and obscure sea-dwelling species have featured in folklore and mythology for many countries, spanning thousands of years. The Leviathan, a fierce sea creature, is the continuation of Lotan, a seven-headed sea serpent, whose story can be traced back to the Baal cycle from Syria. The Kraken, often depicted as a giant squid whose massive tentacles would destroy ships and drown sailors, was first recorded in 1180 by the King of Norway. Merfolk, a part human, part fish species, have been described in the mythology of several countries, more often described as part woman, mermaids, and are considered bad luck, whereby their present predicted disaster and could often cause it. But did you know that Ireland has its very own tales of sea monsters? The Ullafeist. The origin of the Irish sea serpent can be traced back to Irish mythology, but its first mention is unclear. The Ullafeist is the most famous of the Irish sea monsters, described in the Dictionary of Irish Mythology as a fabulous dragon-like beast. Its story continues with that of St. Patrick, who famously banished all serpents on the island of Ireland, which of course we know didn't happen, as there never were any. Before this took place, the Ullafeist, upon learning the news, attempted to escape. While freeing to the Atlantic, the creature was said to have cut the ground in its path that would become the Shannon River. St. Patrick was undeterred, and while he never banished it from the island, he sent the creature to Lough Derg. Sav was the mother of Uiscin, famed for his journey to Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth. As a young woman, Sav had refused the advances of the druid Fear Dorica, who was druid to the Tuatha De Danann. Outraged by her refusal, the druid cast her into the form of a young deer, a doe, in which form she remained for more than 3 years. Taking pity on her, one of the men of the Dark Druid told her that if she entered a castle or home of the Fianna, then the spell of the druid would be broken. Sav heeded his advice and escaped, eventually arriving at the home of no less legendary a figure as Fionn McCool. When Finn arrived home, he observed the young doe and expected his hounds, Bran and Scaelan, to attack it, but they did not, for they too were human creatures that had been transformed into animal form, and instead they approached the deer, protecting it. Suddenly Sav was transformed back into the beautiful woman she once was. Instantly Fionn fell in love, and the couple were soon united in marriage. There was further joy for Fionn when his wife informed him that she was with child. But at last it was at this point that the Dark Druid once again cursed her life, for he had never stopped searching for Sav, and when he learned of her location he awaited his chance. It was not long before Fionn had occasion to leave his home, as since he was a man of the Fianna, he was expected to lead his warriors in battle. As soon as he left his dún, The druid cast a false image of Fionn outside, in the hope that he could draw Solve outside, where his powers would again hold sway. His trickery worked. Thinking she was greeting her husband, Sav ran from the dune, only to be again transformed instantly by Fire Durrick back into the form of a young deer once more. Fionn returned to find his wife missing. He was distraught, and searching the lands of Ireland for more than 7 years, nearing despair, he eventually found a young boy wandering on the stunning mountain Belmbolden, who had been living wild in the forest and mountains. His hounds Bran and Cuchulainn quickly approached and protected the boy. Realizing that he had seen this scene before, Fionn looked deep into the young face of the wild human creature and recognized the features of his missing wife. Amazing, he now found his son that had somehow been born in human form. His name was Oisin, who went on to become one of the greatest of all the Fianna. Oisin meaning little deer. Sav was never found, with legend having it that she still to this very day wanders the forest of Ireland in the form of the dark druid of Tuatha De Danann's command, seemingly cursed for all time. The legend of the Selkie is one that we in Ireland share with our neighbours in Scotland, but there are dozens of varieties and hundreds of stories. In short, the legend of the Selkie is Ireland's concept of a mermaid. What's a Selkie? Also called the seal people, the sea people, or the mermaid. The Selkie is a marine legend that tells of people who are half fish, half human. In water they are seals, but on land they shed their skin to take on human form. And for some reason, they are irresistible to ordinary humans, who are apt to fall in love with the seal people. Popular on islands and rural coastal communities, the legend of the Selkie has endured over the age, and though less, there are still supposed sightings, even in relatively modern times. At its core, the legend is that of a creature that is half fish or seal and half human. Selkies are often sighted by those living in remote coastal areas. Legend has it that in order to come ashore, Selkies must first shed their skin or tail. And if you manage to find that skin and hide it away, the seal person cannot return to the sea. Irish folklore is littered with tales of men and women, usually men, finding a Selkie skin and hiding it, and marrying the Selkie woman. In Ireland, Aes She is the Gaelic name for a supernatural race in Celtic mythology. These supernatural beings, often compared to fairies or elves, the oldest oral stories say that these fairies are either fallen angels or descendants of the Tuatha De Danann, the gods and goddesses of the Irish pagan pantheon. According to folklore, the Aes She emerged after the Tuatha De Danann lost their battle with the mortal Milesians. After the defeat, the Tuatha De Danann tricked the victors into the terms of surrender. Since the Tuatha De Danann were immortals who walked between worlds, they were able to convince the Milesians to allow them to live within the fairy mounds, or small fairy forts, all throughout Ireland. Unbeknownst to the Milesians, these fairy forts, often guarded by magical hawthorn and oak trees, were gateways that led back to the other world. This allowed the Tuatha De Danann to cross unheeded between the land of the living and the land of the supernatural. Most of what is known about the Aes She, or Irish fairies, comes from the oral tradition that wasn't recorded until monks arrived in Ireland and began to write down these stories in voluminous manuscripts. What is known is that the word Aes She means people of the mounds. In Ireland, the She are small hills or burial mounds that dot the countryside, also called fairy rings or fairy forts. Once the Tuatha De Danann retreat into the forts, they became known as the Aes She. The fairy people are frequently referred to as the She for short, but the She is actually the mounds. Aes She is the proper name of the people who inhabit them. The members of the Aes She are considered to be the most beautiful men and women. They are never described by race, ethnicity, just with an otherworld aura. 19th and 20th century literature gave them a more elven appearance, although like most myths, there are also monsters and animalistic entities within these stories. While the Aes appear as extraordinarily beautiful humans, the Cuchulainn and the Cochulainn appear as magical animals, and the Banshee, also known as Banshee, appear as monsters or vengeful spirits. Other forms of the Aes include changelings and the Dullahan. The most important thing to remember about these entities is that even if they don't appear scary at first, or even seem enticing, they are terribly fearsome creatures who are angry at the world of men who forced them into the fairy mounds when they used to roam Ireland freely. Due to the brutal nature of the Aes and the violent ways they protect their home, a fairy ring, a fairy hill or mountain, a fairy fort, a well or a special tree, the Irish people have a long history of placating them. There are many stories, even into the 21st century, of the Aes fighting off those who would try to infringe their lands. Even now, there are areas of Ireland that are protected, not for environmental reasons, but because people are afraid of the retaliation of the fairies who live there. If you ever have a chance to visit Ireland, take a tour of the protected fairylands. I promise you'll feel like you've entered a mystical otherworld. Another way of appeasing the Aes is by leaving small offerings such as food and drink. The people of Ireland have a complicated relationship with their fairy neighbours. While they fear them, they are also honoured. It is believed that if a town protects and honours their fairy folk, they will be protected in return. Before you laugh, there are thousands of stories and legends and oral myths dating back centuries about how fairies have protected the humans that care for them. It was only recently discovered that pre-Celtic version of the word she also refers to the palaces and courts of these fairies. That may explain the sheer volume of stories, including the Tom Lynn legend, and the people being tricked into the otherworld to attend fairy balls and feasts, only to be then taken captive and held as prisoners, who were required to prepare food and run errands for fairies in the mortal world. While the fairy folk and the mortals forced to work for them can travel between the worlds, they mostly do so at dusk and dawn, when the veil between the worlds is thinnest. So next time you walk through a forest or pass a hawthorn tree, leave a tiny present, like a piece of granola bar, for the fairy folk. If they don't exist, a squirrel will eat it. If they do exist, you are guaranteed safe passage through the woods, and that's a bet worth taking. Of all the wonders and terrors of Irish folklore, there are few quite so terrifying as the Slua. Tales were told of their wild hunt long before the coming of Christianity to Ireland, and even today old folk in the countryside will keep the windows on the west side of the house fastened tight at all times. But most especially during wakes, or if someone in the house is unwell, for fear the Slua are coming to pay a midnight visit on their humble homes. Wicked or saintly, kind or cruel, the Slua pay no favourites. They'll take souls of all that cross their path. Although some say they have a particular taste for the living spirits of those who have found true love. The ancients used to think they were fairy gone terribly wrong, warped and twisted without fear, reason or mercy. When Christianity came to Ireland, it became the souls of lost sinners seeking to drag the unfaithful down to hell with them, but the result was the same. The host of the unforgiven dead roamed the earth on Samhain Halloween, and it's for that reason that all fires were forbidden on that night in times gone by, so as not to attract their attention. Even death itself was no release for the souls they captured, joining them in their hunt, spiralling through the lands of Ireland and further abroad on that darkest of nights. If denied their rightful, as they see it, feast, they don't balk at the slaughter of cattle, cats, dogs and sheep with their poisoned darts. It is said that the Slua command men to follow them, and men obey it, having no alternative. It was these men of earth who slew and maimed at the bidding of their spirit masters, who in return ill-treated them in the most pitiless manner. They would be rolling and dragging and trouncing them in mud and mire and pools. In the form of a vast flock of black ravens, twined about with undulating shadows they came, the echoes of their wings being found in stones of ill-omened birds, heralding bad times ahead. The truly broken-hearted might be attacked, or the foolish or unlucky might call them upon themselves by uttering the name Sluagh 9 times over and over. And once they have your scent, let me tell you, you're in trouble. If the pitiable mortal that has drawn their eye can bestir themselves, it would be well to get indoors, with all locked and fastened, until the beating of dark wings fades with the night. Chroniclers of old wisely advised avoiding places of loneliness, such as dark forests and empty streets, lest a passing hunt might take fancy to you. There is one other way to avoid joining them for all eternity, although most dreadful it is, and that's to give them another in your stead. In Irish mythology, Suliach is a multi-eyed sea-dwelling monster associated with Loch Swilly and the River Swilly. The name Suliach, meaning sharp-sighted or seeing one, is also the name of the river, which is thought to have been named after the monster. Legend has it that Suliach was a man-eating beast that was defeated by Saint Columba, also known as Saint Columkill. In the heart of Irish mythology lies a tale of unmatched sacrifice, strength and maternal love. The story of Taltu, a figure who embodies the essence of agriculture, culture and prosperity through self-sacrifice. She's not just a deity, she represents Ireland's undying spirit and its deep-rooted connection to the land. A deity synonymous with the earth's bounty. Taltu's tales are woven with a thread of sacrifice and devotion. She's the very embodiment of the spirit of Ireland, fierce, determined, nurturing, natural and resilient. Her story isn't one of battles against gods or mythical beings, but rather a testament to resilience, sacrifice and unwavering love for the land and its people. In essence, Taltu's legacy isn't just about her ties to deities or royalty, but about a goddess's profound love for her land and its people. In her, we find the embodiment of sacrifice and the profound connection between the land and those who nurture it. In today's age, as we grapple with our relationship with nature, Taltu's story serves as a poignant reminder of respect, responsibility, and the eternal bond we share with the earth. In today's Ireland, lunacy may not be celebrated with the same fervour as in ancient times, but its echoes still resonate through modern festivals and fairs. Some neo-pagan communities continue to observe the day with rituals that pay homage to Taltu and other Irish deities. At the heart of Taltu's legacy is her dedication to agriculture. She didn't just respect the harvest, she was an active participant in it. Legend narrates the tragic tale of her death, a result of her unwavering commitment to clearing vast lands for cultivation. It's a poignant reflection on the sacrifices made for our prosperity. Her grief-stricken husband bestowed on her the highest honour, naming the clear land after her. This wasn't just a gesture of love, but an immortal declaration of her importance to the Gaelic people. Taltu, renowned as the foster mother of Lugh, one of the most prominent figures of the Tuatha De Danann, symbolises the spirit of the earth itself. Her legendary dedication to agriculture is etched in the tale of her clearing vast expanses of land, an endeavour so strenuous that it ultimately led to her death. Rather than a warrior's death in battle, Taltu's sacrifice comes from a commitment to prosperity and the sustenance of her people. Even in her death, she birthed life through her foster son Lugh Lamfada. Lugh, the long-armed master of all arts, who instituted the lunacy or Tolton Games in her honour, ensuring that her spirit and enduring memory lived on until the current age. We have done another video on the Tolton Games and their origin, and a short-lived attempt to resurrect them. In August Golden Morn, the memory of Toltu and the traditions of Luna invite us to pause and appreciate the abundance that surrounds us. They beckon us to join hands in a dance that has been passed down through the generations, a dance of life, harvest and a community, as eternal as the rolling hills of Ireland itself. Accounts of the fabled werewolves or ossuary are recorded in medieval Irish, English and Norse sources. The legend most likely originated from the fact that warriors in ancient Ireland are often referred to as having wolf-like characteristics, from the wearing of wolf skins to have wild hairstyles. The adjective "to go wolfing" was a term used as the warriors as they went on raids. The wolf warriors, or Luchtan, were most likely the basis for background to the Irish story surrounding werewolf. Up to the 16th and 17th century, Ireland was still densely wooded country, and wolves were still plentiful in wild areas. During the 1650, rich bounties were placed on the hunting and extermination of wolves. The last recorded account of the killing of a wolf occurred near Mount Leinster in County Carlow in the late 1786. The wolf was killing sheep. The ancient kingdom of Ossory comprised largely of what is now County Laois and Kilkenny. Before the Normans arriving in Ireland in the late 12th century, the kings of Ossory claimed descent from one Lugh Lamfada, who was said to be the first to adopt the wolf shape. His brother was called Fearsome and was recorded in medieval genealogy as King of Ossory and the ancestor of the subsequent generation of kings, all the way to the Norman conquest. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got this far, congratulations, because it was quite a long watch. And if you've got this far, it's safe to assume that you like mythology, or Irish mythology in particular. If so, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, as we will be doing a lot more videos of this nature on the individual, more important characters in Irish mythology and covering them in greater depth. So until we meet again, slán agus beannacht.